One big team. One big team. One big team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 72 of Riot Act, the alternative music podcast, starring Stephen Hill and my beautiful co-host, Mr. Renfrey Deadman.
I think that must be the first and only time you'll ever refer to me as beautiful.
You're beautiful.
It's true.
I saw your face.
In a crowded room.
Fucking disgrace.
It's a bit harsh.
Nah, sorry, mate. It is a bit harsh. How are you, mate? You all right?
Yes.
It's Christmas still.
Yes.
It's Christmas last week.
Yeah.
Even more Christmas now.
It's closer to Christmas.
Yeah.
Closer to Jeebus' birthday.
And I've eaten a lot of chocolate.
Right.
And that's about it, really. That's what I have to report. You know, normally we do some sort of gig review. We're talking about the news and stuff. Because it's so close to Christmas, everyone sort of just winds down. I think, you know, tomorrow I'm going to see the Cavalieras.
Ooh.
Doing stuff from Beneath the Remains and Arise.
Oh, hello. Lovely stuff.
Should be good.
New Sepultura album next year.
That'll
be
there
less
is. Well, do
exciting.
you know what? I listened to the new... We can talk about this if you want. I listened to the new Sepultura song. It's fucking great.
Oh, yeah? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, really good. And a new Stylosis song. Mm-hmm. New Stylosis is out. Really, really good. So if you like metal... We were sort of bemoaning metal a little bit all year pretty much. But there's two really good metal songs that have just come out this week.
Oh, good.
Or the last week. Really good. Do you want to say, you got anything?
No, not really. I just feel like we should get on with it,
Yeah,
we?
sure. Okay, so last week, Renfrey and I began our countdown of the best albums of 2019. We did 20 to 11, and you can listen to that right now. We should say our friends at Musicism. Obviously, our good friends at Musicism are integral to helping this podcast happen. We love them, and we would kiss them open-mouthed at just the first available opportunity.
Would.
Ooh, Renfrey.
Woulda, coulda,
naughty
shoulda.
little spaniel. They do courses, online tutorials for budding singers, songwriters, guitarists, producers, people who want to improve their skills in music. And it costs £9.99 a month to get involved, to become a member. And if you put the code RIOT in capital letters into the checkout, you can get 25% off. And that feels like a pretty good bloody deal, if you ask me.
Christmas.
Now, come here.
That didn't sound open mouth.
How do you do it? Open? How do you like?
I think it'll put listeners off. So,
Yeah,
so
let's
I
not
just
do
don't
that.
think we should do it.
Anyway, so as I said last week, we did 20 to 11 from our best records of 2019, which means today we finish up numbers 10 to number 1. Before we do that, Renfrey, I'm going to throw this at you. As just to see how good you are. You've done improv before, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. Let's see how you roll with this. The most disappointing albums of 2019.
What?
Not the worst, because I was thinking, what's the worst album I've heard this year? And I think because I'm on a podcast of significantly higher quality than I have been before, I've not been subjected to so many abysmal records this year that we've reviewed. I think we've gone out of our way to avoid the sort of stuff that I know irks me. So I don't really have anything that I think has been out and out. There's been a couple. The Coldplay album is bad, really bad.
Would you say it's one of the worst of the year?
No, I mean, it's pretty bad. And I would say the Blink-182 album stood out for me. It is,
Of course.
just horrible, horrible record. So I sort of changed it to most disappointing.
It's a hard one to say disappointing because obviously they've not. I'm going to say the Black Album by Weezer, just because it looked like there might be a trajectory of them getting better again after the White Album. And as I said, I quite liked Pacific Daydream, even though it's
It's better than the Teal album.
The Black Album.
Well, yeah, the Black Album and I saw a tweet from someone saying the Teal
Nonsense.
album is the album made this decade with the least amount of artistic integrity and the least amount of artistry put into it made in the entire decade. And I thought, yeah, that's probably right, actually. Karaoke, innit? It's just like Rivers Cuomo goes to a karaoke and sings the most obvious song.
Yeah, but you play the instruments as well. It's like band karaoke.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
It's good marketing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm still sticking with that
Yeah.
line. It's great marketing. People didn't care about Weezer, and then people cared about Weezer again overnight,
And they released a dreadful record,
which was a bloody shame. But there you go. Maybe the Weezer one. God, I don't know what else. I don't know. What are you saying?
Well, the obvious ones, there's two pretty obvious ones for me. Refused, War Music.
Okay.
The bar is still very high for Refused. You know, I think that album's bad, pretty bad, especially for Refused. But it's got a kind of couple of all right songs on it. But that's not, it doesn't feel like enough for me. Do you know what I mean? But I would say probably that for me, the most disappointing record for something which, you know, I didn't really have massively high hopes for it because I wasn't into the EPs particularly. But, you know, we've talked about them a lot, and live I was always impressed with them. But it's got to be Fever 333 for me. I think, you know, it's the more I listen to that record, the more I dislike it. And
one of the most divisive records of the year by far.
And I mean, there is, you know, I expected it to be quite a lot of kind of COD, Rage Against the Machine, quite simplistic and quite well produced. You know, the John Feldman production, which I've spoken about a lot, is not something I enjoy. But I mean, for me, it's, I think Inglewood is, there is no defense for Inglewood. There is no defense for that song. There cannot be any level of defense. It's just the stinkiest stink of the 2019. That song.
I think it's good. I mean, yeah, it's
like Ricky Martin, mate.
I'm kind of am I surprised? I'm sort of surprised that people have been so divisive with Fever 333, and I'm wondering where it comes from. I guess is it just because very passionate people love the bands that those guys used to be in.
The pedigree of the members, and I think it feels like, and the fact that, you know, I mean, I saw them at Download last year, and I thought they were brilliant.
They are an amazing live band. I really do think that
they were really, really good. And I heard the EP. I think we talked about the second EP, didn't we? Was it the second or the first EP? The Made in America.
No, that's their first EP.
That's their first EP. Okay,
it's their only EP. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it? But you know, I heard the song, and then heard the EP, and I was like, the EP's got. It's not great, and it's not really. I'm not that excited about it musically, but it had a lot of energy, and I thought, well, if they can write some songs, great. And I think they've actually, the songs on the EP are better than the songs on the record.
I do prefer the EP, definitely. Yeah. I think they wrote. I think there are more songs on the album than on the not as in there's 10 songs on the album and 7 songs on the EP, but I think there are more. They're more song-like, if that makes sense. I just don't think it went in the direction that you plus a lot of other people, let's be honest, wanted it to go in, because it was a very kind of. I mean, people keep saying that they're basically a pop band, which I do think is a bit ridiculous to call them a pop band.
They're not a pop band.
No, they have poppy elements, definitely, and you know, but I mean, we've said this before, like Let Live had poppy elements. They maybe integrated them better and in a more interesting way. I definitely agree with that, as I just said it. But you know, I don't know. I guess because they have done so well so quickly, not many bands play the Forum on their first album, do they? No. And you know, and it doesn't look like it's going to go away. I mean, you've got 333 Records now, haven't you?
Yeah.
And you know, they've just signed like Nova Twins, who were doing, who played that Brain Stew cover with them when I saw them at the Forum and things like that. You know, I'm sure. I think we'll probably review that.
Yeah.
I think it's
I've
worth
had a quick
reviewing.
listen to that actually.
Yeah.
That's for next year, obviously. But
Yeah. So you know, I mean, they're not going away, I guess. But yeah,
which also means Let Live aren't coming back.
No.
That's the other thing, isn't it?
I never would have expected it though.
No,
anyway,
but that's for me. So you'd say Weezer the biggest disappointment of the year?
Probably. I mean, off the top of my head, yes. There's probably other ones, but
how about, because I'm presuming, I know this won't be in either our top 20. Ammo by Bring Me the Horizon, big records, very divisive, hot potato of a record. Got them their first UK number one. End up headlining, you know, All Points East, which you can say, it didn't sound very well, and they gave it a ticket, blah 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 blah. They still did it, right? You know, that's what it will say in the, you know, on festival posters when you look back at them historically.
Yeah.
Ammo by Bring Me the Horizon, we were sort of a bit like the record. We were kind of up and down in it a little bit.
Yeah. Are you asking me? Was it disappointing for me?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, disappointing, or were you disappointed? Well, yeah. I guess just looking back, I've picked a couple of the records that were kind of big talking points of the year.
For me, not massively, because I've never been a massive Bring Me fan, even during There Is a Hell and Sempiternal and Suicide Season. I will absolutely. I think Sempiternal is a fantastic record from a band who I don't care all that much for. I think There Is a Hell has some amazing bits on it as well. But that's about as far as I go with Bring Me. So they've never really been in my wheelhouse. I've just never really been bothered by them. So to say, was I disappointed by it? No, not particularly. If anything, I think I probably liked it more than I expected to.
Yeah. Now, funnily enough, I went back to it quite recently.
Okay.
And I like it. Like I do. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot on it that I don't really care for.
Yeah.
But I actually find myself like. I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh God, I really love That's the Spirit," and now they've gone really poppy on Ammo. I think that Ammo's far heavier. Than That's the Spirit.
Yeah.
Far heavier.
That seems like a silly
and
thing to say.
far better as far as I'm concerned. I think Happy Song off of That's the Spirit is really good. I think Throne's really good as well on That's the Spirit.
Throne's the one.
And Drown is really good as well. I thought the singles from That's the Spirit were quite good and Nothing Else. But I think there's actually bits like Nihilist Blues was one that I was like, whoa, I'm not sure about this originally. That's grown on me quite a lot. I think the song, the trolling song, Heavy Metal, as much as it is like Kid on the Ground with a Black Dahlia tank and, that's a silly thing to do. But the song, you can't argue with. And Danny Filth turning up, lovely stuff. It's actually a pretty decent mainstream rock record, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I mean, I have not returned to it since we reviewed it. And did it come out January?
It was early February, I think.
Okay, so I feel like
early February.
I've not returned to it at all. I'm not massively interested in returning to it, but I don't dislike it. I don't hate it, and much like you, there were bits that I thought were great, bits which I thought were just meh.
Yeah, fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Right, well, let's crack on.
All right.
Let's do the thing.
You started first last
I
time?
did start first last week. So do you want to start first this week?
Well, I think it makes sense to continue down that vein of you.
Well, it might do. It might not. But let's see. All right. Okay. No, I will. Fuck it. Yeah. Number 10 for me. This actually goes to show, I think, how good this year has been. I think I said last week when we got to number 13 for me, which was the National, from here on in, it is like really, really great records. I was very vocal when we reviewed this record about how I basically kind of insinuated that it had a great shot of being my favourite record of the year at the time. And listening back to it, it ended up being number 10. I listened back to it in the sort of build up to this, and I was like, my God, I'd been gone a couple of months without listening to it. It is absolutely brilliant. So Teeth of the Sea, Wraith, is my number 10. Like I say, could have been my number 1 in a lot of years, because having gone back to it, like I did go a couple of months without listening to it, having gone back to it, I just remembered what an amazing trip it is. It's predominantly, I would say, I mean, I consider it to be an instrumental record.
Yeah. I'd say broadly it is.
Yeah, there are some kind of female vocals that sit, not like backing vocals, but stuff that sit kind of to the side or, towards the sort of a little bit further back in the mix.
Yeah.
And are not the dominant thing of the songs that they're featured in particularly, especially not throughout the entire track. But it just mixes a lot of stuff, which I find really, really fascinating and interesting. A lot of things, like I think I compared it to sort of Aphex Twin mixed with Ishan or something when we reviewed it.
Yeah,
and
it's a really odd record and a very difficult one to describe. Isn't it
is a really odd one to describe because it is kind of, for me, it's sort of techie prog, because it does have those textures and tones of what tech metal is, but there's nothing metal about it at all. I mean, there's literally nothing metal about this record at all. In fact, there's not even that much which is at all guitar driven about this record. It's very much a kind of electronic record, predominantly.
I was going to say showing our age, but I think if you came across this in HMV, it would probably be in the electronic section.
Yeah, I think so.
I would have thought.
Yeah.
So,
but then it's got this brass section in it, which
Yeah.
is just, it's a really odd mix of kind of jazz and broken electronics and kind of tech prog song structures.
Yes.
It's brilliant. Like the song Visitor, which is it's the fifth song, so there's fifth out of 9, so it is literally the midpoint.
Yes.
The middle, the centerpiece of the entire record. It just takes you so many different places. And if you put it on again with headphones, I would suggest listening to this record if you can on a very good sound system, particularly on a good pair of headphones if you can. It's like an unbelievably immersive experience. You listen to that walking down the street. If you've got 10 minutes just to walk down somewhere with that on, the way I always say like those albums can kind of change the way you walk. Mm-hmm. You walk in about 10 different paces and styles and lollops and throughout doing it, because it just builds so slowly and it comes to its crescendo and then it takes another turn and it's just it's a really surprising record. I haven't listened to it a lot. There are records on this list that I've listened to loads, but every time I listen to it, I'm just completely transfixed by it for the entirety of it. And it's not it's not a short. It's about 50 minutes or so. It's
about that. Yeah, it's not an easy listen either, is it? It's quite. There's something. There's a pervading air of kind of menace or dread. Yeah. Which I mean, I have to say it's a record. I brought it in actually for the catch up thing, didn't I? But like, it's a record that I if I'm honest, I admire more than I love. And I think it is because, I mean, maybe I've not really fancied listening to too many dready records this year. I don't know. But I think it is a brilliant piece of work. And just the fact that we find it so difficult to describe is often the sign of a great, interesting record at the very least, which is exactly what we want to cover on this show.
Absolutely.
So.
It was not something... I've never sort of had to come out and review electronic music or talk about how I think about things that are really outside of rock and metal, which is why I like doing this. It's cool to be able to do this because I couldn't really do that before that much. But sort of then what you realise is that when you do get an album as weird as this, you then sort of go, I don't even know if I'm qualified to know how to even begin to speak about this record, because it is such a fucking, there will be people who know all about jazz who will be able to say, well, that's a bit Charlie Parker or that's a bit like Duke Ellington or whatever, whereas I can't do that, and I can do it a bit more with electronic sort of stuff, and I can kind of see how the line could be drawn to, them playing Art Tangent or whatever.
Which they have done.
I
think.
But it all feels like this kind of big jumble of stuff which I'm more aware of rather than have both feet firmly planted into. So that for me is an exciting thing. And I've just really fucking loved listening to this album and actually really... Not only have I loved listening to it because it's been good, I've really loved listening to it and being like, I really like something which is just so far away from when people go, oh, you're that dude who likes Sick of It All.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's far away from your comfort zone, I guess.
Yeah, it's really far. It's really quite far away from what I would normally listen to.
Yeah. It's a fascinating record, and I implore everyone to check it out and listen to it. And there are going to be a lot of people who are just not into it, and you can probably figure that out in the first 3 tracks, I reckon.
Yeah.
But
that will be 20 minutes of your life.
yeah. But it is. But no, it's a really fascinating record, and it's a very difficult one to pigeonhole, which is always a good thing. I find.
It is great. It's great. That's Wraith by Teeth of the Sea. My number 10.
Okie dokie. Okay. Well, my number 10. I mean, I said that I haven't listened to many sort of difficult records this year, although this is going to be a bit of a juxtaposition to that, because my number 10 is Caligula by Lingua Ignota.
Okay.
Now, it's a very, very curious thing indeed, having to put an album like Lingua Ignota into your albums of the year list, I find. An album, the majority of which I do not enjoy listening to at all. I despise listening to a lot of this album, which sounds like an absolutely crazy thing to say, but it's because it's sort of a stark reminder of the sort of male toxicity that is prevalent in our society, and a kind of, I think I said this during the review, but I think if art is meant to be some form of kind of empathy machine, I can't really think of many other pieces of art at all that are more powerful or more prescient than Caligula by Lingua Ignota. It's opened my eyes to wider kind of physical and psychological torture, I think, that's dealt out mainly by men towards women. I mean, it does go the other way as well, but let's face it, the majority is men towards women. And the debilitating effects that masculine toxicity and dominance and control can have over women. And obviously with things like, the Me Too movement and things like that. I think the Me Too movement was a very stark kind of... it opened a lot of men's... I don't know how you felt about this. We've not really talked about it, but the stark thing with the Me Too movement for me was just realising how many of my female friends felt like they had sexual abuse at some point in their lives. I mean, that was the really difficult thing to it was a difficult thing to face and to deal with. And then I think this just throws that kind of, that sort of, this album makes me fucking furious that this kind of thing happens, because it is so stark and raw, and it is so bare, and I've probably only heard this record maybe 20 times, but it must be the record that I've listened to the least in this whole list, easily. But I think it needs to be acknowledged, because I can't think of anything that I've listened to which has sort of affected me more. And we had a conversation off mic.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me saying this, but we had a conversation off mic where with Lingua Ignota, you were sort of like, it's a difficult one, because I think you either put it in your albums of the year and you put it at number one, or you don't put it in at all. And I was really conflicted as to what to do with that, because I didn't feel like I could put in a record that I barely listened to, if I'm totally honest, at number one. But I do think records like this have to be talked about, and I think they have to be put out there and acknowledged. And number 10 seemed like a decent spot to put it, because, it's the beginning of this part of the podcast, and it seems like a good place to highlight it, I suppose. I think like some of the lyrical couplets on here are just like, I am the best friend you'll ever have, all this is meaningless without me, or who will love you if I won't, who will fuck you if I don't. Just shows like the sheer power and dominance and control that can be had over people. And it's an absolutely sickening and disgusting thing, which I feel this album has allowed me to empathize more, or maybe sympathize is a better word, I don't know, but I feel like it's brought me closer to friends of mine who have gone through those things, because I've been able to understand it maybe a little bit better. And I'm sort of skirting around this a little bit, because I don't want to give the impression that like, oh, well, I've heard this album, so I know what it's like now. But it sort of feels like the closest you could get, maybe, without actually that happening. And I think the manner in which it takes such a dark, disturbing subject and makes it so OTT with its, I said it was like a Greek tragedy, when we were covering it. And I think that could seem like a really, to take emotions that are so raw and so stark, and then to deliver them in a really over the top fashion could seem like a disrespectful thing to do, but somehow that is not what has happened with this record. It's just elevated those emotions even more and makes you feel it even more. And I think it's a really, really important, sometimes beautiful record. You know, sometimes it's really, really beautiful. It's really odd, but it's those stark contrasts between the sort of fucking death dealer stuff and then just these beautiful passages where there's all these choral, layered vocals, and she's, you know, singing basically about killing her tormentor, but it's sung in the most beautiful, angelic kind of way. It's an absolutely phenomenal piece of work, and it needs to be talked about. So I had to put it in somewhere, and this seems like the best place to do it.
Okay, that's your number 10.
That's my number 10.
Feels like we need to lighten the mood a little bit with my number 9, and I will do that with what has been one of the most divisive records of the year for both of us, but so much fun. Number 9 for me, Dinosaur Pile-Up, Celebrity Mansions. Rem, for your face as you've gone from that
my face
into this. It seems like kind of perfect in a lot of ways. I don't really have anything kind of new to say about this record that I didn't say in the review when we did it. I just think it's the most fun. It's the most fun record of the year. Like I spoke last week about Bob Mould and the Wild Hearts and Nervous and the Menzingers and Puppy and Pup, and we've got Danger Face up here as well. I think the Bocassa records are loads of fun as well. And there's been there's been loads of really, really cool, but like again, Bellevue Days, you know, there's been loads of really cool just rock albums that have come out this year, just kind of cool alternative rock albums. But for me, there's something so swaggeringly cheeky and almost bordering on obnoxious to what Dinosaur Pile-Up have done on this record, and that's why I can kind of see why someone like you might go, come on. But I actually love how bratty this record is. It's bratty, it's tongue-in-cheek obnoxious, but it can be fairly obnoxious at times. It's about drinking, it's about going out and doing dumb things. It's a big dumb rock record essentially, but you know, so's Americana, so's Dookie, you know, so are so many fucking great records. So is Pure by Three Colours Red. Do you know what I mean? Like so many great records have been made that are just fun. You know, this reminds me of I said it at the time, you know, it's 1977 by Ash. It's the Blue album, and parts Pink, or well, maybe going up to kind of more modern Weezer as well. If the Red album or, you know, Raditude had as many fucking good songs as this does, then I don't think people would be going, oh God, Weezer, every time they release a new album. Because, you know, Professional Freak sounds like Silverchair. It's just, you know, and they're not a new band, but to me, this sounds like a bunch of 15-year-olds kind of doing their first. That might sound like an insult, like, you know, playing the first songs that they ever wrote. But I kind of love that about Dinosaur Pile-Up. Like, I've gone back and listened to their other stuff, and some people have been a bit kind of snotty about this record. So some of their fan base, I know, are like really very disappointed with this record because the other stuff was a bit more worthy, and it was like proper kind of a bit darker, sort of Nirvana style alternative rock. And Nature Nurture. And, you know, I get it. But the thing is I don't actually think they're as good at that stuff as they are at this stuff.
Yeah.
Thrash Metal Cassette is just about driving a car really fast and listening to thrash metal. Stupid heavy metal broken hearted loser punk that's what it is. That's this whole album. You know, it's about staying up till 4 a.m. and playing music too loud in a flat that you knew of people that you've met that night, and just acting like a fucking dick for a little bit. And, you know, although I don't do that very much anymore myself, Well, I don't at all, actually. I don't at all, actually. But like, you know, these songs are just, I think every single one of them is great as well. Black Limousine, Round the Bend, Pour and Get, like, they're all brilliant. But for me, particularly, I know you hate it, but it is the closest thing we've had to Beverly Hills by Weezer or Pretty Fly for a White Guy. Back Foot is one of my absolute favourite songs of the year. It's just so fucking dunderheadedly, clunkily, like gormlessly stupid. It's like Fat Lip or something. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And you know, I like Fever for the Flavour by Hot Action Cop. Do you know what I mean? I like the Bad Touch by the Bloodhound Gang. I like I like One Week by the Bare Naked Ladies. And I always go, I only need a little bit of that. But no one makes those songs anymore. And Dinosaur Pile-Up have made an entire album of those songs. And some people might go, it's not cool, and pretend that they don't like Limp Bizkit, right? But you do, right? You do. And I'm just admitting that I do. And I would love to sort of, I could have put this, you know, way down the list and picked even one of these bands. I could have picked Pup and been more worthy, you know, and like, it's actually, you know, it's a darker record underneath and there's more layers to it and blah, blah, blah. It's like,
that's what I did.
Yeah, I know you did. I know. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But I cannot sit here and lie to you and tell you that A, I've listened to the Pup album more, and B, that I like it more. I like the Dinosaur Pile-Up album more. And when the week we reviewed it, we did Dinosaur Pile-Up, Baroness, and St. Pierre Snake Invasion, right? All of which are great records, right? And I said at the time, I think Dinosaur Pile-Up's my favourite one. And you went, well, come to me at the end of the year. It has ended up being the highest placed on this list.
Of those three. Yeah. Okay.
So not only do I prefer it to all those albums that came out that week, I prefer it to like the Wild Arts and the National. And do you know what I mean? Like, there are some fucking great records that this is above. But I just don't think you can argue with, I don't know, man. Like, you need that shit. I think you need albums like this. You need albums that are just really, really good fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah, I think it's a taste thing.
Okay. Well, do you know, if 1977 by Ash came out today, I think it would sound like this. And good God, did I love Ash when I was a kid. You know, I knew that Ash were never going to be my favourite band or anything. Yeah. But, you know, if you put 1977 on now and I'm around, or you put on Regular Urban Survivors by Terrorvision, or if you put on, you know, I'm trying to think of ones that are not as critically lauded. You know, bands that people liked at the time that weren't as critical. Like Joyrider, bands like Brit Rock. Brit Rock. I mean, I just love all that stuff. I just fucking love it. And Dinosaur Pile-Up they've just nailed all of those 90s alt rock bands, and they've done it with this kind of really sort of snarky, sarky, obnoxious 2010s attitude. It's fucking great. It's brilliant. And I'm kind of gutted that they're clashing with Max and Igor doing Roots, doing Beneath the Remains and Arise tomorrow, because...
Oh, it's all right. I'll go tomorrow and I'll just stand at the back with my hands crossed.
Play a 15-minute long instrumental.
Look, I cannot deny that this record is done immensely well, and I definitely said some stuff at the time that we reviewed it where I was like, this record's going to be forgotten about, surely, and that has not happened. I'm holding my hands up, and I am saying I was wrong in that premonition. So, fair enough. I feel like I should return to it. I haven't at all. I probably should have returned to it before doing this, actually, because maybe, who knows? It could have been my
you
number
probably
one.
assumed that it wasn't going to be in here, right?
Yeah,
right. Okay, right. Fine.
But you know, I when I say I think it's a taste thing, it is that obnoxious thing. It's like you're either going to be with that or you're going to be against it. But I get it. I knew it was going to be in here anyway, so you know.
Yeah, well, from when I put it up on. So, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a different thing. Like, I am fairly obnoxious.
That's true.
And you're quite nice.
Thanks.
The old pendulum swing. That's how you can tell us apart, guys. Anyway,
I'm the nice one.
Celebrity Mansions by Dinosaur Pileup. My
Very
number
nice.
9.
Okay. My number 9 is one of yours from last week, The National, I Am Easy to Find. You spoke very eloquently last week about how certain albums come to you at a time when you feel like you need them. And I could not agree with you more. When it comes to this record, I think the very strong female presence on this record is something that, whether consciously or subconsciously, has probably enveloped both of us this year. And I think, you've got Lisa Hannigan, Sharon Van Etten, Mina Tidal, Gail Ann Dorsey, and Kate Stables, all on this record. And the beautiful thing about it is they feel like true collaborations as opposed to just guest spots. Yeah. The manner in which they interweave their vocals with Matt Berenger's vocals. I mean, I don't know if they did do this, but it feels like they must have been in the studio with the. It feels like they must have created the songs with the National. I don't think that is the case actually, but it does have that feel to it because they feel so integral to those songs. Sometimes you have a guest spot. Guest spots are cool and stuff, but you could often take them away and you wouldn't lose too much. If you took away the female presence from this album, you would lose so much. And actually, I think it's a big part of the reason why it's my favourite National album as well, because it gives you more of a juxtaposition. Yeah,
now you said that.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's such a... I think, like I said last week, it's such a not just a journey, but you are enveloped on this journey so deeply. You are invested in it so heavily that I kind of, when I spoke about it last week, you bringing that up, like, you're absolutely right. Obviously the story is, the story of life, isn't it? It's somebody's life, the birth to the death, and based on the short film, which was based on the music that the National created for short film. Like, it's this weird kind of what they called Russian doll. Of influence that's had that's kind of been its creation, and it's but yeah, the female parts of it are something which, because all of it feels like such a big world. Last week when I was talking about it, I didn't go to pick out certain elements of it because it all just felt so, like I say, like you are just totally sucked into it all, and it didn't just feel like, oh, that's the story of this girl. It felt like that's that house. You can it's one of those that you can smell where they are. You can taste it. You can feel really. It. I mean, yes, I totally agree. It's a really epic record. Somewhat in length. It's 63 minutes, but also just there's so much in it. There's so much to unpack in it. And I found that you mentioned Not in Kansas last week. Yeah. Wonderful song, and definitely I think probably was my favourite upon first hearing it. But my favourite song on this record has changed several times. At one point or another, it's been Not in Kansas, Oblivions, The Pull of You, Hey Rosie, I'm Easy to Find, So Far, So Fast, Hairpin Turns. It's changed half a dozen times at least, and I think that is always the sign of a really, really good record. I think at the moment I'd probably have to go with Light Years as my favourite. It's the final track on the record, which is this great song. This beautiful piano ballad, which just completely tears me apart, basically. But there's so much to sort of take in and so much to assimilate on this record that you can be listening to it for months and months and months, and suddenly you'll hear a line or a harmony or an organ part that you'd never noticed before. And then that just makes you totally fall in love with that song, and you realise that song's actually amazing. It makes me really, really sad, this record, to be honest. Yeah, it makes me really sad.
But it does.
I'm laughing at that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It makes me really sad, but in the most sort of cathartic, bittersweet way, because it makes me pine for things that I can no longer have, and yet somewhat grateful that I once had them. And I think it's... and there's going to be other records which do that actually, which will come up. But I think being reminded of that kind of thing is really important, and the National I Am Easy to Find is a really stark reminder of that for me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's an incredibly important album to me personally this year, and to you as well.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, really. I mean, it wasn't as high up, but it probably, it seems silly going at Dinosaur Polo's better than that.
Oh well,
It's not really, but
well.
just what I've been listening to. And speaking of things, so yeah, number 9, The National, I Am Easy to Find is your number 9. My number 8 now. Okay, right. Who saw this coming this fucking early? Tool. Fear Inoculum is my number 8. The best band ever. Still, I'm having it, probably. The best band ever. And that's U2's fault for releasing so many bad albums over the last 15 years, because it would have been them if they'd have stopped in 1994. But, or the Manic Street Preachers after 4 albums. But Tool are my favourite band. They've been my favourite band for a very, 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 very long time. And I would be obviously talking shit to say that I wasn't excited about this record, but it had been that long that I wasn't actually super excited about it. It wasn't until I sat in that big room where we sat, where we were very lucky. Like I got the chance to listen to it 3 times before it was released. When I reviewed it for Metal Hammer, sitting in a big room on a sofa with it being played over a very good stereo sound system and
Very loudly.
very, very loudly. And at that point, that's when I got the kind of the chills, the tingles that, oh my God, it's the new music from Tool. That was kind of the first time that I'd really got it. Even going in, I was like, okay, well, it's the new Tool album. I'll listen to that and we'll see how we do.
Sorry, just briefly, but I mean, when it's been that long, when it's been 14 years, very, very few records are that worth that anticipation.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of stealing yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That's totally understandable. Yeah.
And the initial thing of hearing it once and going wow, and then hearing it again and going God, and then hearing it a third time and being like, right, I initially walked out and went, it's gonna be the album of the year, right? It's gotta be. And in the months that have followed, its release, when it first came out, I listened to it a lot. And I still listen to it a fair bit, although I have to say, I don't actually listen to Tool a lot, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they feel like a treat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. And so, they're not the sort of band that I listen to a lot. But I have moments and times and periods where I will binge and gorge on Tool for a long time. And, when this record came out, I did that. It is a really, really impressively brilliant record. We spoke about it for about 90 minutes.
Yeah, it was,
Probably like
the longest review we've ever done.
67 minutes.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah. Almost the length of the album.
Yeah. And we spoke about every song kind of individually. We spoke about all of this stuff that I'm saying now. And,
we could have gone on a lot longer.
We could have gone on a lot longer. I mean, I still don't really feel like I have absolutely, and I don't, that's the great thing about Tool is I think you can go back to a record 5 years after it was released and 5 years after you first heard it and hear new things from it. Yeah. I think this is a very good Tool album. I think it might be their worst, but saying that, it might be their worst album. It actually might be the worst album by the best band ever. And I don't feel like that means it's a bad record. I just think the standard of the music they've made previously is astronomically high. That what this feels like, Fear Inoculum, is a consolidation of the fact that Tool sound like Tool at this point. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel about it. I felt like I got something quite different from 10,000 Days. I certainly did about Lateralis. I think, I got Undertow and Anema at the same time, essentially. So I could tell that those albums were fairly different from each other, but not huge stylistic leaps. Probably the smallest stylistic leap until this point, I would say. This is a really, really great record. It's Tool, and it's Tool doing all of the things that that has made them kind of the biggest cult band in the world. I think there are moments on this record that are just absolutely incredible, as good as they've ever been. Do you know what I mean? There are bits on, Nemea, Tempest, Descending, I think are as good as any song. Could go toe to toe with the very, very best of anything Tool have ever done before.
That's about 35 minutes of the record.
It is. It's about half the record. Yeah, it is. So let's not
We're just under.
This is a large chunk of the record.
Yeah.
Is absolutely 10 out of 10, world class, phenomenal. This would be higher up, but we're getting to a point in this list, I think, where everything that comes after this, really this is the point where I said everything after this I love. I think everything after, from sort of this point onwards, is where you go, okay, well, even Tool can't slip through. This is an impenetrable wall of just only brilliant music, only like absolutely staggeringly great music. And that says a lot about how good 2019 has been for music, I think. The reason why it is a little bit lower than people might have expected it to be is, it's wow. I'm struggling to find actual criticisms for it, and I don't think I should have to sort of justify why it's only at number 8. Really, it's just that some stuff has been better than it. But
People might be surprised though.
I think people will be a little bit. Yeah, I think maybe some people might be a little bit surprised. I think the title track, and then you've got stuff like Legion Inoculant and Chocolate Chip Trip and the mocking beat at the end, the stuff that kind of breaks it up. I do think, I just think that the title track's kind of all right. I think a lot of this record follows a fairly similar pattern, not formula, but until taking Tempest out of it, I do think they do have a type of pattern. Each song feels like an album in itself rather than a song, if you know what I mean. And that's a cool trick to do. I'm not necessarily, have I ever put Fear Inoculum on and felt like it really genuinely flows like an album, like in the way that Anima or Lateralis did. I don't feel that. That would be my one criticism of that record, of the record. That would be my one sort of criticism of it, is that I feel like a lot of these songs seem to exist in isolation. I don't know how you feel about that.
Might have to go into it a little bit later.
But it's only
differently, but I'll tell you why later.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's not, and that's a pretty weak criticism, really. If that's the worst thing that's about it, then it's not, But I think, especially for Tool, I feel like some of these songs could exist sort of solely on their own, and you do get the kind of quiet build up, and then it sort of gets a bit, and then it goes back to where it started. It kind of builds up and then goes down and then goes back to where it started, and then it ends, and then there's the silence, and then the next one starts, which they didn't always do before. It's still fucking great. It's great. It's a really, really great record. I would maybe like a little bit more Maynard on it still. Like, I think most people would be like, be nice to have Maynard on it a bit more. Because he is so brilliant. But it is I feel like I've just put it in as one of the best records of the year, and I've just gone, this is why it's not one of the best records of the year. But it is. It's number 8. That's still good.
That's still very, yeah.
I mean, when you come to hear me talking about the other records, I think it'll make sense. But for Tool to come back and to just not really miss a step in terms of sounding exactly like Tool and writing these songs that give and give and give and give and give and continue to give and continue to sort of surprise and beguile, and do you know what I mean? And for you to try and give so much of that, for you to unravel and unwrap when you've waited this long.
Yeah.
And it can only really be a disappointment. Really, you've got to think like 14 years. It can only be a disappointment, and I don't feel disappointed by it. I don't feel disappointed by it at all. I think it's great. It's just that there are 7 other albums that I think are better than it.
It's really annoying when I can't. Well, obviously I can have a conversation with you about it, but I'm trying to steel
No, that's
myself
fine.
and say it myself. But yes,
we'll
yes,
come
yes,
back
yes,
to
yes.
that. I'm sure.
Well, we will come back to that at some
Yeah,
point.
that's Fear Inoculum by Tool.
Number 8. Interesting. Okay. My number 8, again, a record that you had last week, the Menzingers, Hello Exile, the
good record.
6th studio album from the Scranton, Pennsylvanian American heartland rock band type people. Surely we're saying I think the Menzingers have been the best.
Band of the decade?
No.
Come on.
I think Menzingers have been the best heartland at doing that heartland rock thing.
Ever.
Possibly.
Possibly ever.
Possibly.
I think that they've definitely got 3 of the, there's always a Gaslight Anthem with the kings of that, but I think the Gaslight Anthem don't. Menzingers have got at least 3 absolutely fucking stunning records now. At least 3. Hello Exile, this one, and After the Party.
Hello Exile. Wait, what do you mean? Hello Exile is this one. So After
Hello
the Party.
Exile. Oh, fucking.
On the Impossible Path.
On the Impossible Path, yeah.
Okay. I mean, Rented World's my favourite, but there we go. But then that's not how most people feel about it. But
I like that as well.
I said during the review that I think this is probably my second favourite Menzingers record. It quite firmly is my second favourite now. I think I tend to prefer the Menzingers when they're a little bit more kind of laid back and contemplative. I love the punkier stuff, like I Don't Want to Be an Arsehole Anymore and all that kind of thing. But I feel overall, Hello Exile might be the most contemplative record they've done. Certainly more so than After the Party, generally, I would say. I mean, there's contemplation on all of their records, but, I think songs like Last to Know, Hello Exile, and I Can't Stop Drinking, just, they do that. I don't even want to call them ballads because I don't think they are ballads, but they do good ballad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do good slow song.
Yeah.
Better than almost anyone I can think of, really. And they have a way of chewing through the fat and cutting straight to your heartstrings, basically. They're able to write lyrics and couplets that feel so personal and pertinent to you that it feels as if this song has been written for me. I feel it so strongly, and yet thousands and thousands of people are feeling exactly the same thing. And that is a phenomenal skill. That is a really difficult, phenomenal skill to get right. And I think is what I think that is what that is the thing that brings all these heartland rock bands together effectively. That feeling of being able to kind of empathize, I guess, in a brilliant way. That's what Springsteen does brilliantly, isn't it? I feel like these are just songs for fuck-ups by fuck-ups, to scream at the sky and to get absolutely wasted on and then just like scream them into the ether. And it I mean, in a way, it's just another brilliant Menzingers record, but it's a brilliant, pertinent record to now. You said last week that America, You're Freaking Me Out might be the best opening song of the year, I think you said.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I may think, yes, I probably agree with you. I think the sentiment of that song, there's a lot of people who are feeling that way. Yeah. And it cuts to it so brilliantly. High School Friend is just wonderful. Strangers Forever is just the most beautiful, poignant, heartbreaking sort of song where maybe a relationship didn't go right or something like that, and you just wish you'd never even tried with that person or anything like that. It is just another brilliant Menzingers record, but it's another brilliant record by one of the best bands going at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's fucking great. Super great.
Yeah.
There you go. Number 8, the Menzingers. Hello Exile. Right, my number 7 was one of yours from last week.
Hey.
So we're doing
just doing swapsies.
We called it the best metal record of the year for kind of just being heavy, and that's kind of it. Yes, absolutely. Car Bomb, Mordial. I wasn't even vaguely excited about this. I have to be honest. I have to be super honest about it. I thought the last Car Bomb album was good at a type of music which I kind of grown rather tired of. You know, tech metal, which is essentially what this is, that kind of genty Meshuggah thing, particularly the heavy bands. I think I'm always more interested in some of the lighter bands. You know, Tesseract, I guess you could say Leprous a little bit. Even Periphery have their kind of clean vocal soaring-y moments, and I like those bands. You know, Periphery are obviously can be heavy as well, but when it's just these kind of chuggy, you know, palm muted, you know, there's a song called XOXOXOY on it, but that, which feels like taking the piss out of, you know, these tech bands that just go gaggle, and like they think, oh, that's what Meshuggah do. It's like, they don't. You can't do that. And so I've become very, very just completely disinterested, really, with that scene as a whole.
It's very, very tired, in my opinion.
And I knew from seeing Car Bomb with Gojira and Code Orange a few years ago that they were a better version of that. And I thought that record that came out of theirs was a much better version of a lot of those bands. But I have to say...
You're talking about Meta.
Meta, yeah. But I have to say, it was not something that I was ever going to go back to. Because for so many of those bands, I'm like, I got Obscene over there.
Yes.
I got Obscene.
Yes.
I've got Meshuggah's entire back catalogue.
Yes.
I've got Between the Buried and Me. I've got a bunch of stuff, right? I don't need you.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't need you. So I was not excited about Car Bomb's record at all, to be perfectly blunt about it. You were like, well, wow, new Car Bomb. And I was like, oh, well, we will review it. But it will probably be like, oh, they're pretty good.
I was excited. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I remember you were, yeah. Because everything of theirs I'd heard, I was like, they're a good band from a scene which has become very, very dull. And I genuinely believed you couldn't do anything new with that. I genuinely thought, what can people do with that sound and that style and that genre, that little subgenre of music, that pocket of music? Because no one has, have they? No one's even really fucking tried, to be fair. And along come Car Bomb, and within probably about 15 minutes of putting it on, I was just like, my jaw was on the floor, like, oh shit, somebody's finally taken this bloody unbelievably generic, really now at this point very safe, very dull type of music, and have injected it with some energy, some enthusiasm, some songwriting craft, some actual ingenuity, and have made a metal record which doesn't sound like just another metal record. And, you know, there are obviously, you know, that they exist within the framework of what those Meshuggah bands do. But, you know, there are so many bits on this record where you just go, right, that's going to stay with me now. Like I mentioned XOXOY, that XOXO, that will, you know, that sticks with you. You know, we've done the old, the Scattered Spirits, pew, 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 pew thing a whole bunch of times. It's just like, you know, the title track is just crushing, absolutely crushing. And then the song that follows it up, was that Icidal? Icide? How you say it. But again, like just some of the drumming patterns in that are just, you just go, how?
Yeah.
But yet it stick. But I can remember the riffs. You know, sometimes you listen to these bands, it's just like, oh wow, that's a really, really impressive drum part. But then you forget it the second it finishes, and it just goes on to more like bam, ba, 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 bam, ba, ba, like that. This record is catchier and heavier than anything any of those bands have put out, maybe ever. It's fucking brilliant, and it deserves to be. It deserves to be thought of as a Le Font Sauvage, as a Obscene, as a The Trees Are Dead and All We That. Like it deserves to be. It's in the caliber of those unique bands that all of these other chances have been copying for years and years and years and years and years. You know, the Six and the Meshuggahs and the Gojiras and the, you know, whoever else you want to chuck in, the Dillingers, whoever else you want to chuck in there with them. This album has now put them, for me, maybe not on par with, because it's one album, but within touching distance of being one of those bands.
If they do another album this good, though, they will be in there, won't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of those other bands are pretty much gone now. Like Dillinger split up, Sixth are kind of, Sixth are together, but just sort of intermittently. Who else did I say?
Gojira.
Obviously, Gojira leave like 10 years between each album.
Yeah.
Meshuggah haven't done anything, which has been super exciting for a little while now to my ears. So I think, I think it's all set up for Car Bomb to be a fucking big deal. And it's weird to me that it doesn't really feel, it feels like we're the only people that have sort of said that. I mean, I've got Metal Hammer over there, the top 50 albums of the year, and it's like I think this was number 3 on my list for Metal Hammer. This is number 2 or 3. I think it's number 2, actually. Something's pipped it. I expected to see them really fucking high up in the end of the top 50 year list, and they were about number I think they're in the sort of low 30s.
Right.
In the top 50. And I was like, that's really weird. Like, I would have thought, everyone would have been really big on this record. And, it just doesn't really feel like anyone else that I've not seen anyone else from any of the other sort of media outlets really go that hard in on this record. And I don't know why. Is it just because of like tech metal's not the cool thing anymore?
I wonder. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit like, oh, we're better than everyone else, but because this is difficult music to take in and listen to, and you kind of need to, you need to really kind of listen to hear the subtle things that they're doing, because I think what they're doing is quite subtle, but it is a massive change.
Yeah.
Like things like the tempo, just like. Well, there is no proper tempo.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like we said at the time, it's like tech metal. It used to be so stark. It was in blocks.
Yeah,
wasn't it? It could be in blocks,
exactly.
And it would be like,
this feels more fluid,
mechanical, and this sort of feels like it's really done by you. You can feel the strings bending, and you can feel like the hands moving, and it's not a mechanical. It doesn't sound like a mechanical Pro Tool thing. So there's that, but there's also, like you say, it is different, and you say like you. On one level, I agree with you. Yes, there are subtleties in this which wouldn't necessarily be that easy for every single person to pick up if you're not that familiar.
Certainly,
with
if you listen to it passively, I think.
But it's just so fucking heavy and great.
Yeah.
That I don't even think it would matter.
Yeah.
People picking up people going, oh, the new Killswitch Engage album. Like, fucking don't get me wrong. I love Killswitch Engage. I'm not slagging. I'm not like you. I love them, right? But the idea that the new Killswitch Engage album is more exciting and better than this.
Oh, it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. That is stupid. You're stupid. And come on. Just mental. Anyway, Mordial by Car Bomb. The best, like, out and out heavy record of the year. Bar none for me.
It's lovely when you get angry. I do like that.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that.
My number 7 is a record which has stayed with me for most of the year, I would say, and it's from a band who I've always seen so much potential in, always loved them live, was never totally convinced by their debut record, but I really feel like they stepped up for the second album. Mm-hmm. It is Nest by Brutus.
Ah, yes.
I fucking love Brutus. I feel like I love this record even more than I did when we reviewed it. In fact, I don't think I would have predicted that it would be number 7 in my top 20, even at the time when we reviewed it, and I liked it very, very much then. But I just think they are really fascinating, interesting, dynamic mixture of so many different elements and exciting things. Basically, like they're kind of like a punk post-rock band, Brutus.
Yeah.
They have the expansive, they can go really, really expansive and really like post-rock in terms of their textures and so on and so forth. But then they'll like chuck a fucking thrash metal riff into something, and it all works. It all makes sense. Or I certainly feel like that's the case with this record. I've gone back to Burst, their debut, a couple of times, and I still feel like that record is just like shows the massive potential that they have, but it wasn't quite there. With Nest, I just feel like they just had the songs.
Yeah.
I said last week, I think, and I've been saying all fucking year, I think War is my favourite song of the year. I think I'd probably still go with that. I think bands really love Brutus. Just seeing the amount of I've seen Brutus this year 6 times. because they're fucking supporting everyone. Like constantly, they are constantly on tour and constantly supporting people, because I think other bands are just like, holy shit, this band are amazing. The main thing that people talk about is Stephanie, and the fact that she's singing and playing at the same time, and it's incredible. She's brilliant. But I think the other two guys in the band as well are it's brilliant what they are doing, and they make so much noise for a trio. Like they go to some really really loud places that you would not expect just a 3-piece to be able to get to.
Yeah.
But then there are times, as I say, when they're really, really expansive and loud, but then there's also really beautiful, emotional, like poignant moments on the record as well. They are thrilling live. And I just think they're one of the most exciting bands on the planet right now, because no one else quite sounds like them. They are a wonderful hybrid of sort of 7 or 8 elements, which just make up this pretty unique concoction that is Brutus. And I think if the third album is as big as a step up as Ness was from To Burst, I think the world will have to sit up and pay attention. But yeah, I just it's barely been off my stereo. Can we say that now? My MP3 player, whatever. But I've listened to it. It's been a constant in my life this year. And I haven't been able to stop listening to it, and I just fucking adore it.
It's a good record, that.
Yeah, great record.
Yeah, good record. So that's Nest by Brutus. Your
That's my
number
number 7.
7. All right, my number 6 is, again, I think just Pippin, kind of coming up, just Pippin Car Bomb. People might go, oh, hold on, I thought you said Car Bomb was the best heavy record of the year, and Cult of Luna are very, very heavy. Cult of Luna are very, very heavy. Dawn to Fear, the album that I'm talking about now, which is my number 6, is a very, very heavy record as well. But I think to call it a straight heavy record is doing it a bit of a disservice, I think.
Cult of Luna by... Oh, hold on. Dawn to Fear by Cult of Luna is my 6th favourite record of the year as well.
Let's do it together then.
Oh,
let's do it together.
Let's do it together.
Yeah, Cult of Luna's Dawn to Fear. So... I think Cult of Luna have been on just rare form. I think we said it in the review. This decade has been, for those post-metal bands, when the ISIS and Neurosis and Amon Ra and all the kind of the sort of heavy hitters from the post-metal world, I think Russian Circles as well. I think Cult of Luna, for me, this decade have become the standout band in that scene. And not as good as A, obviously, but yeah, they have become the standout band in this scene. Vertical, we'll be talking about our albums of the decade at some point, and Vertical, Mariner, you might hear me expand on that theme a little bit more. But so my expectations levels were understandably getting towards the end of a decade where Cult of Luna have been just insanely brilliant, were very, very, very high. And a bit like Tool, really, I think sometimes you go, I don't know, I think they're probably going to have to drop off at some point, because bands always do, don't they, right? Bands do eventually stop releasing really great records, and they just release all right records. And I wondered if maybe this would be the one where Cult of Luna just released a kind of quite good record. But no, this is fucking outstanding. And I think, we said it again, we said it in the review, the addition of actual melody, like real, obviously there's melody in Mariner with Julie Christmas. I think Julie Christmas brings the majority of that melody to the record.
On Mariner,
On Mariner.
Yeah.
But to see and hear Cult of Luna, delving into stuff like, I think we said at the time, like Radiohead, is not something which I've heard them do before. To hear kind of organ pieces and
yes,
I never remember the squeeze box, the accordion, and hearing that and hearing these kind of traditional folk elements being able to exist inside this crushing, what Cult of Luna can do, crushing post-metal in their sleep at this point.
Yes.
But it's stretching those dynamics out a little bit further. I mean, Lights on the Hill, the 15-minute long epic,
Yeah.
sprawling epic that, again, I think we spoke about quite heavily in the review, is just so amazing. It's so breathtaking. And it feels, again, this album, it's that does not feel like 15 minutes of your life.
Absolutely not. Well, this album is 79 minutes long, and I routinely complain about albums being too long. And I loaded this album up, and I was like, I like Cult of Luna a lot.
Yeah.
But the idea of a almost 80-minute Cult of Luna album, I was pretty much like, oh, really? That's I'm not sure about that. And there is something, time just bends in on itself when I listen to this record, and I feel like only half an hour's gone. It's hypnotizing, and hypnotizing is the word. In fact, looking at other reviews of the record, I feel like every single review uses the word hypnotizing at some point for this album, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the heavier, more Cult of Luna type tracks, I suppose, are the ones which got my attention to begin with. Stuff like The Silent Man and The Fall.
But that's the album opener, and it sets the scene really well.
Yeah.
Like, and at this point, I go, "Ooh, then it set the scene well."
Yeah.
The Silent Man.
Well, what I was going to go on to say is I think my favourite songs from this record are the less typical Cult of Luna songs, aka Lights on the Hill, and actually. My gold standard may go to We Feel the End, which is, almost entirely sung. It's like, it's really, really subtle and very, like, it's the kind of song that you don't even fully notice initially, It's almost, it's ridiculous to say this of this song because it's 7.5 minutes long.
It's like an interlude.
It's almost like an interlude, yeah. And it does feel like that. But it does feel like an interlude because it's so kind of, I don't know. Well, yeah, time bending, but the more and more I've listened to this album, I think I've seen quite a few fans dismiss this record, or people who used to be fans or whatever, and just say, "Oh, it's just another Cult of Luna album." And I think it would be really easy to say that if you just sort of put it on and listen to it quite passively.
Yeah.
But it's about delving into it and finding all those things, all those sort of folky elements that you were talking about, and all those kind of things. And then when you pick out those bits, it just transforms into something utterly, utterly brilliantly devastating and wonderful. I mean, I didn't think I'd be talking about a Cult of Luna record which is potentially better than Mariner, but this is starting to get to the point where I'm like, is this better than Mariner? Every time I listen to it, I feel like it inches closer and closer and closer. And
I wouldn't absolutely. It doesn't feel like a stupid thing to say, Although I'm not. I don't know. And
it does, and I will say it does get better with every listen as well.
Yeah.
It gets better with every single listen. I think it definitely is better after seeing it live. They played Lights on the Hill live.
Didn't play I Love Lake Tahoe.
No, tragically not. They played Lights on the Hill live, and again, that was just mesmerizing, and it's just I mean, I don't think anyone quite does this like Cult of Luna in this current time.
Certainly not what they're doing right now, I don't think, no.
Yeah,
certainly
exactly.
On the basis of this album, and I think it's with Marin as well, and I'd even go back to Vertical as well. I think every one of those records has their own little unique flavour, but particularly what they've done on Adorn to Fear is very different from that. I mean, I think we did mention Radiohead quite a bit when we were doing the review last time. I mean, listening back to it, and the more I've kind of listened to it, I've sort of picking out bits that I go, that's like kind of latter period REM, and that's like spiritualized, and all of the, for a band who, I mean, I actually, not to name drop too much, but I interviewed Scott Kelly once from Neurosis, and he says, he loves the fact that bands are always cite Neurosis as an influence, but he likes them to kind of take what Neurosis did and do something else with it. And at this point, a Cult of Luna, you would go, oh yes, I can see they obviously listened to Neurosis, but when it was sort of, Neurosis were the key, the band, weren't they? Neurosis were the band to name check
Very
for
much
this type of music.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, Cult of Luna have a modicum of Neurosis in them, but you wouldn't even say that is, if you're making a pie chart of the influences of this record, it's not like 80% Neurosis and then with a little bit of folk as well. It's barely even. It's probably about 30% Neurosis, maybe 40% Neurosis.
Yeah, and it all feels integral to each other, kind of in the same way that I was talking about with the National and the female voices in that. Like those folky elements, if you took it out, it would be a massively detrimental to the songs. And yeah, it's just a fucking great record, isn't it?
It's really, really brilliant. Really brilliant. So there you go. A Dawn to Fear by Cult of Luna is both of our number 6s.
Both of our number 6s.
So this is my number 5 then. Let's go on to my number 5. Now, I know I've said it a couple of times, but this is where it gets really good. This top 5 is as good a top 5 as I have had in my top 20 albums a year that I can remember for 2000. I think I always talk about 2016, how good 2016 was. I'm not I think this at least rivals is as good as 2016 from here on in. This might be the best top 5 that I have ever put together in terms of the best records. Like, I think this, now we're getting to the point where it is almost impossible to separate these 5 records. But I had to do that. So my number 5 is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
My number 5 is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Is it? This is getting really weird. It's getting really weird. Yes, Ghost Teen by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. You are more of a Nick Cave fan than me.
Very much so, yeah.
But I am a fan of Nick Cave. Fairly casual fan, but a fan nonetheless. I'd obviously heard Skeleton Tree, as it, I'm the sort of person who will listen to a Nick Cave record if it gets really good reviews, essentially. And a lot of them, most of them do. Most of them tend to. But if there's something which I feel like is very, very special, or if it comes out at a time when, like I think when Skeleton Tree came out, I would watch the documentary about him and interview the guys. And so I wanted to listen to the album, obviously. And I was pretty excited about this, but I did sort of go, well, I wonder how much I'm going to enjoy this.
Very quickly, I was skeptical as well, because I thought, double record, he's already sort of done that before. I mean, I loved the last double record, the Abattoir Blues and Light of Orpheus, but I wasn't sure if it was necessarily the right thing to do. And I heard lots of synthesizer stuff, and like, is that really a good idea? Stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I read I kind of read a review of it before I listened to the record, and they were mentioning Disintegration by The Cure, and saying it's just basically, 11 disintegrations by the title track. Disintegration by The Cure. And I was like,
I just couldn't imagine it in my head.
No, me neither. And I thought that's kind of a weird thing. But I guess much like Mark Lanigan's record that we spoke about a few weeks ago, which is very, very different from Mark Lanigan. This feels very, very different and unexpected, and not the sort of thing you would assume would be the sort of safe ground for Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Absolutely not. No. That's something he and they are very, very good at doing. They don't really repeat themselves.
But I mean, the record itself is just utterly fucking glorious, tragic, and heartbreaking, and uplifting, and beautiful, and poignant, and so many things which have just really, really resonated with me a lot, like over this year. Obviously, you talked about a kind of cathartic experience from listening to the record. The song Ghost Teen Speaks. I had a right old funny time the other day, Renfrew. I was coming into work. I got into work really early, and I'm on the 5th floor of my office. And I had it on my headphones as I was walking into the office, and it just sort of started as I was walking in. And I was the first person in, and the sun was coming up. And I put that song on, and obviously it says like, I'm beside you, look for me, look for me. And it was one of the most sort of emotionally, it was, I sort of just stood there and I watched the sun come up, and I was just sort of thinking about stuff, and I had this record on, and I got really just sort of, I got really emotional about it. And Nick Cave's been through some really horrible things, and I don't think you can listen to this record and it's not explicit, but it's also you know kind of what his own experiences are, and I think you can kind of marry those experiences with what the record says and what the record talks about.
Well, something that's a little bit of a departure for Nick Cave with this record is he's often very narrative, and this is more esoteric and it's more
spiritual.
Yeah. Yes. So I think it is. God, forgive me for saying this, but like an esoteric collage of kind of like.
It feels like it poses a lot of questions. It feels like it's a record about it's about loss, and it's about not really being able to understand why you've had that loss, and it's an amazing thing when an artist can create a world, which I think you're right, it is esoteric. But I think because you know what Nick Cave's gone through, you feel like you know exactly what he is kind of getting at, what he is referring to, how it relates to his life. Yeah. But it can be, that mirror can flip back onto yourself, and I think you can listen to it and you can apply all of these stories and all of these characters and all of these kind of bigger ideas to your own life, and whatever you've kind of been through. And again, it's a record. It came at a time when you were like, I kind of need a record like this to come along.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I can definitely empathize with that feeling of putting on this record, and things happen in life where it feels like it's almost soundtracking stuff that's happening to you, like that experience you had when you're at work and seeing the sun come up. That feels like it happens to me almost every time I put this album on. When we were talking about albums that sometimes albums come along and you need them, we talked about that with The National, and this is that again. And even though it's my number 5, whilst it isn't, quote unquote my favorite album of the year, I think it's probably the most important album to me personally this year. And I think 40 years into his career, Nick Cave is still exploring these kind of the human condition and murmurations of life and death and mortality, and doing it in a more beautiful and poetic way than anyone I can think of. The manner in which he explores grief in this record as a multifaceted, multi-layered emotion, for want of a better word, it doesn't feel like a record which is just, oh, I'm grieving and I'm really sad. It feels like a record which is, which explores the fact that grief sometimes tempers with our sanity. You start wanting to believe in ghostly apparitions that aren't actually there, just so that you can get some sort of sense that someone who is no longer there is actually still there. And that there is a strange sort of insanity to this album, which I think we can both really empathize with.
Yeah.
That you get when you lose someone close to you. But at the same time, I think it's actually a really celebratory record as well, because it reminds you that life is precious and time is short, and there's only so much time that you have to, tell someone that you love them, or tell someone that, or make a phone call to that friend that you haven't spoken to in years and years, or just do all the things that you say that you're going to do and then you never do it. Because one of the things I found with grieving this year that I've struggled with the most is having regrets about all the things that I didn't do. And I think this album quite beautifully puts that into it highlights that and shows the beauty of how grief can bring people together as well as tear them apart. And I think there's that beautiful juxtaposition in it, which is what really makes it, as I say, multifaceted and multi-layered, and a really, really beautiful, stunning, sublime piece of work, which is at once immensely difficult to listen to at the moment, but also one of the most cathartic experiences which I have had listening to music possibly ever.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think, just before we sort of move on to the next record or whatever, I also want to say how much the Bad Seeds themselves bring to it in terms of the music that is on this record. Because like I said, when you think of a sort of Nick Cave doing electronic sort of post-punk, Cure, pop or whatever.
It's actually a scary thought.
It's quite a scary thought. But I think the Bad Seeds have created something that sits somewhere in between kind of country, shoegaze, dream pop, and David Lynchian sort of mellow
Lynch,
anguish. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
The whole record,
it's done with class.
it's
so classy.
They're one of the best things in music, aren't they?
Bad
Nick
Seeds,
Cave's and the Bad Seeds.
Yeah.
It's like they're.
I would go to task with anyone who disagreed with
even
that.
as someone who, really only has 4 or 5 Nick Cave records that I even really know that well. And then Grind, the first Grinderman album as well. And I am aware of just how fucking perfect a unit they are, and how much they bring to this poet, this sort of this
orator.
And this record's it's a really, really, everything about it, like you say, class. It's just it's brave musically, lyrically, it's honest, it feels like the most genuine artistic statement that you could ever wish for from someone. And that's what you want. That's what you want albums to do, isn't it? That's what you want records to do. That's why you listen to music, to kind of empathize with people, to feel alive, and you know what I mean, and to to sort of what you've just said. You go, you understand more about grief through listening to this record, in the same way as when you said about Lingua, you feel like you understand more about one part of something in life that you maybe didn't quite understand as much before.
Exactly.
And that's incredibly powerful. So there you go. Both of our number 5 is Ghost Teen by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Brilliant record. So my number 4, I wonder if we've got the same number 4. We'd be surprised.
I don't think we will.
Okay, fair enough. My number 4 is on a similar sort of theme, but almost a sort of an angrier sort of theme. This is where Nick Cave has gone more mellow. So have Swans. Leaving Meaning by Swans, which, I think I said in our review, I like Swans, and what I usually do with the Swans records is I get it, I go, oh, new Swans, and I listen to it, and then I go, fucking hell. I'm like, oh, that's good, but it's bloody hell. It's hard work. I might leave that for a bit. And then most of them I might come back to now and again, but I really don't make a habit of listening to a Swans album too much. No. Because, good God, Swans, if you're in the know, Swans are Swans. If you're not in the know, fucking just go and listen to Swans and go, wow, they can be pretty abrasive. Swans. They are a very, very difficult band to listen to. And I don't feel like this album's been particularly well received, which is odd, because I think I said it again in our review, I don't think Swans are universally just a band who are these sonic noise terrorists, these like ear hole torturers, like they kind of get painted out to be every time you read about someone, you know, because their reputation precedes them. I think.
That is the thing that people always talk about. Yeah.
And I think, you know, yes, they have definitely got that in them. And yes, there are points in Swan's discography where they are earth-shatteringly, ear-bleedingly loud. And there are moments on this record that are hard and harsh and very, very difficult and challenging to listen to, but just not for Swans in terms of what they've done. I think actually this is the most, I'm not going to use the word poppiest, but the most, the widest Swans have opened their door for you.
It's the easiest, quote unquote, Swans record I've ever listened to, if that makes sense. Not that it's easy, but it's the easiest. It's not easy,
but it is probably the easiest. It says a lot about Swans. I just think, and I don't think they're better for it, but I think I'm really delighted to have a Swans record where I feel like I have a proper handle on it. I feel like I get this record, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I understand it, and I think because of that, I can enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, I can actually get some sort of enjoyment out of it. You know, It's Coming, It's Real, which was the first single they released from it. I remember listening to that and being like, oh, I'm sure this is just like the you know, it probably is the catchiest song on the record. It's just, but you've got to think, it's nearly 8 minutes long, and it's very minimalist, and then it builds to quite a sort of odd crescendo. It's a weird song, but it's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I think the nub is amazing. Sunfucker is the piano that sort of starts the nub. This really, really lovely piano part, and then this really, really lovely female vocal comes in. You go, oh, Swans sound lovely, and then you get this just a horrible feedback and this weird drum pattern, and then you go, oh, they're kind of warping and distorting. They're taking nice music and they're kind of just wringing its neck a little bit. And even though this is not the most sonically challenging, most like aggressively displeasing Swans record, it still feels like it's a subversion of something. Doo-wop, kind of again, David Lynch, kind of 1950s crooner music, just straight kind of piano jazz, like all of those things are taken and swanned up on this record. And I think it's great that, you know, it doesn't feel like, to me, it doesn't feel like a Swans record with Swans being mellow. It feels like Swans have gone, we're going to take a load of mellow music and we're going to kind of fuck with it. We're going to distort it. We're going to make it grimy. We're going to make it weird. We're going to make it unsettling. And it is a really, really unsettling record. I think Michael Guerra's performance on it as a vocalist is brilliant. I mean, he's got that he's always had that weird sort of throat singing that he does. Yeah. And he sounds, you know, weathered, older, weathered, just, you know, unsettling, but really catchy and like in parts, like genuinely catchy. Yeah. There are parts of this record that I find myself like sort of tapping my foot along to, or sort of swaying maybe not tapping my foot along to, but sort of swaying along to.
Yeah. Well, it's that hypnotizing thing again.
Yeah, it is. And again, like, yes, Swans have that thing where it's a this whirlpool that they can kind of suck you into, and this is kind of, you know, less of a tornado, a storm, you know, a kind of violent tsunami of noise. It's more like just a strong breeze.
I'm sure Michael Guerra will be very happy with that.
Well, you know, I think this is not the most challenging Swans record by any stretch of the imagination. No. And it feels like people have kind of gone, oh, what? Oh, come on. Oh, it's a bit like easy, this, isn't it? It's just like some of it's quite nice. And I think they're getting it all bass-ackwards. I think they're getting it all round the wrong way. And I think actually what Swans have done is make a really cool album of taking a load of stuff which is like, you know, crooner music and turning it into something a bit weird. It's got a Twin Peaks vibe to it, again, to mention David Lynch. Yeah. But, you know, I did think, oh, we'll review Swans and it'll be like and then I'll just sort of listen to it a couple times and go, that was cool, and then not really listen to it. And I found myself constantly wanting to put it on over and over again, to the point where I just now, it's become one of the albums that I've listened to most in the year, and it only came out at the end of October.
Yeah, it wasn't very long ago at all.
I've been rinsing it. It's got all the way up here,
right?
And I have apps, and I love it.
Right.
I just absolutely love it. It's brilliant.
It's by far my favourite Swans record that I've ever heard. I've only heard sort of 4 maybe, but it was sort of the only Swans record that I could wrap my head around, I suppose.
Yeah,
and I love it. It isn't in my list, but I do love it. I think it's a great record.
Yeah, really
good choice. Okay, my number 4, something a little bit different. I don't know if this will be a surprise to you or not. I was quite big on it, but Death is a Warm Blanket by Microwave.
I thought it might be.
Okay. This album has just been... I mean, I said it about the Brutus record, but this album might well be the album I've listened to the most this year.
Right.
Partly because it's 29 minutes long, but I just think it's perfectly contained. I love every single song on it. I think it goes to so many different places. It sort of combines the best elements of the best emo bands and the best elements of the best hardcore bands and puts it into one neat package. And it's so diverse, it shouldn't really work, and yet somehow it does. And I can't even get my head around why it works, but it just does. I just think the songs are flawless. I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
Microwave were a band who I thought were fine before I heard this record. They were all right.
Yeah.
Their last album, Much Love, I thought was quite good. I saw them support Creeper, I believe, at the Shepherd's Bush Empire.
Yeah,
I want to
they
say,
were on that, yeah.
you know, and they were quite good, and I quite liked them. But I never, for in a million years, expected to put this album on. I never expected a Microwave album to be in my top 20 ever. But it's so different to anything that they've ever done in the past as well. Like this, I put Much Love on after being obsessed with this album because I was like, I wonder if I've missed anything in that record. No, I think they've just become 10 times better in the space of 2 or 3 years. And they sound like an almost completely different band now as well, bringing in elements from so many different types of bands, everyone from like Sunnydale Real Estate to Fugazi to like singer-songwriter acoustic-y stuff, 9 Inch Nails industrial-esque things.
Yeah.
And there's just all these disparate elements, and it really shouldn't work, but it just adds up to a really cohesive, really interesting 30-minute journey. And if I find myself with a spare 30 minutes and I just want to listen to something, it's nearly always Death is a Warm Blanket that I go to. I just fucking love it. I don't have loads more to say on it because it is just a great album with great songs, in my opinion. But it probably is the record I've listened to the most this year. Right. Partly because of its brevity, but I just adore it. I go to it all the time. And it's one of those records that sometimes I'll listen to it 3 or 4 times in a day. Yeah. Because I just can't get enough of it. I absolutely love it.
Wow. There you go. Microwave, I can't remember what that album's called.
Death is a Warm Blanket.
Death is a Warm Blanket.
Possibly the best titled album
of the year. Good title. Yeah. Okay, my number 3. We've already spoken about this, or you've spoken about it, and I kept very, very quiet about it because this has been one of the most torturous records to know what to do with. Probably the most torturous record to know what to do with, because I've gone for Caligula by Linguica Ignota, number 3, despite the fact that you say you only listened to it 20 times. Yeah. I have got through it twice in one sitting, and I've listened to it. I tried to listen to it again when I was putting my Metal Hammer list together, and again through this. I've had to listen to it in different parts, basically. And I did say it either goes in at number 1 or it doesn't go in at all, because judging it amongst the other records
amongst Dinosaur Pile-Up.
Dinosaur Pile Up. And to be honest, even judging it amongst
The other, the other
with
records.
possibly with the exception of maybe Nick Cave.
Yeah.
With the exception of Nick Cave, which I think does something very, very different.
Yeah.
But does something which is as impactful and is as raw and honest and is as, disinterested in hiding its true form from anything.
There's something that feels crass about comparing it to other records, isn't there?
It's just because there's two, and I did think about going, well, fuck it, and then maybe I will put it at number one. But there's two records that I think have been absolutely just so great that I thought, well, I'm going to put it at number three because, like you said, I can't do a thing at the start and go, hey, I didn't put Linguita Ignota in. I think it needed to be in here. It's the single most difficult record on listening experience that I have ever. I think I said it in the review. I stand by it. It's the single most difficult listening experience of any album I've ever had to listen to. The most impressive thing about it to me, if you want to call it impressive, I'm not sure if impressive is the right word, the impact of it just will not dull.
No.
The impact of this record, every time I go to listen to it, I still feel sick. I still feel angry. I still feel a bit ashamed of myself. I don't really know why, just because I feel like I'm going, oh, please stop saying this and please. And, I've got a real problem but what you said earlier about an empathy machine, I have a real problem I found in my sort of latter days of not wanting to confront anything horrible.
Okay.
I don't really like things. I don't want to argue with anyone, which I know seems ridiculous when you
Very off-brand.
Yeah, very off-brand. But in reality, I don't mind arguing about music, but I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to think about nasty things. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to I don't want to be confronted with that. But you have to be. You do have to be.
Sometimes it's important to be, I think.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to be like that. And I would love to live just a kind of ignorant, happy life. Like I would like to do that. But I shouldn't, and nobody should. Nobody should. We should either get rid of the horrible things in the world, or we should find a way to confront them to then get rid of them. I think this record is just unsurpassed in the level of horror and brutality and pain that it has brought out of its creator. I don't think I've ever heard another record which is so what is the word I'm looking for? Wounded. It's unbearable. I mean, it is. I literally do find it unbearable to listen to, and it seems odd to be talking about it in using words that are such negative words when I've put it so high up on a list full of albums that I think are just Cult of Luna, the new Tool album for fuck's sake, Swans, the Nick Cave album, even going back to last week and talking about stuff like the National and the Menzingers, who I think are really brilliantly beautiful bands. There is something about this record which is the most impressive artistic statement I think anyone has ever made maybe in the history of music, like that I've heard. I'm trying to think of another record which has come close to making me feel like this, and it has burnt itself onto my psyche forever. The comparison that we keep making, and apologies if you find it a boring one that we do it all the time, but I think it is the best one, is of Irreversible, the film, the Gaspar Noé film, which I've seen once, and I still could probably not recite, but I could probably tell you scene by scene exactly what happens, because that one watch was one of the most harrowing things that I've ever had to sort of experience in art ever. And it's been a long time since I've felt that strongly about something until this record came along. And you're right, all the stuff you said about feeling kind of empathy for something. Yeah, it's not something that I really have thought about much, even with it going on, to be perfectly honest. What I do know, what I will tell you to kind of to like pick up on something that we were talking about earlier, is that I would like to think that I'm aware of that stuff. I remember, like, this is a bit of a weird personal story, but I went on a date with a girl once and she got really drunk and she kept kind of saying to me, have a tequila shot, have a tequila shot, have a tequila shot. This is years ago. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to. And she kind of sort of basically forced herself on, like, obviously it sounds stupid because I'm 6'4" and she was just a young girl and she was going, drink this tequila, drink it. You're going to drink it. And then when I went to leave, she was like, I'm getting in the cab with you. And, it was, for me, it was like, okay, cool, well, see you later, sort of thing. Well, no. But I do remember getting out and going, fuck, if the roles are reversed there. Like, I felt intimidated by this girl who's like half my size and just kept shoving tequila in my face. And I was like, and I've always remembered that. And I've always thought, like, keep your fucking distance from people because you're 6'4" and you, like, even though I have absolutely no intention of being a kind of like space, personal space hogging motherfucker or whatever, I've always sort of gone, I've got two sisters and I was basically brought up as an only, just in my household with my mum, and I would feel awful to think that I had ever made somebody feel uncomfortable, even feel uncomfortable in that kind of way, or threatened by me in a kind of sexually aggressive way in any way. I would feel really, really horrible about myself if I was under the impression that I'd made someone feel like that. And so to hear this and this level of kind of pain and vitriol, and you're right, it makes me angry, and it makes me angry at whoever she's pointing it at, and it weirdly makes me angry at myself, and it weirdly makes me angry at her for making me listen to that, for making me kind of confront all this stuff, and making me think about those things. I don't want to think about those things, and yet here we are. I don't have to put this in my list. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be in here. I'm under no obligation to put it in there. I could have just gone, do you know what, fuck it, I'm just not. I can't talk about it. I can't. But this record is unbelievably powerful, unbelievably important. I think it will be a record that people talk about forever. It is the best record of the 21st century. It is actually that, like, if we're talking, if you can separate yourself, like, this is the finest. This is one of the of this millennium. I think this record is the rawest and most explosive artistic statement of pure honesty I've heard. There are a couple maybe that I've been pointed out to sort of predate that. I would go back to Drift by Scott Walker. Mind you, that is this millennium as well, maybe this decade.
I think this is harder than the Drift.
And I do
the
think
Drift
this
is hard, but I think
this is much more difficult than Drift. And what you said before is about it being beautiful as well is right. It can often just, I actually think that makes it worse.
Yes, well, it's the juxtaposition of those. It's the sun that streaks through those black, dark clouds, which makes it worse when there's suddenly a really beautiful, melodic, tuneful bit that comes through, and you're like, oh my god, this is so lovely, and then something fucking devastating happens again.
Yeah.
And that, if it was devastating throughout, we talk about this all the time, but if it was devastating throughout, it would not be as powerful. And it's those moments of light that make it even more powerful. It's
I mean, I don't really know how to go about sort of properly summing this up. I don't really feel like I did in the review. I don't really feel like I have here. I don't really know what I'm meant to do with this record for the rest of my life. Do you know what I mean? But it's there now. Do you know what I mean? It's there. And I can't ever foresee a time where I forget it. I forget how it made me feel, and its impact dulls in any way. I just don't believe it will. I don't believe it. I think this will stay this hard hitting and this important and this impactful forever. It is a landmark record. It is a landmark record. It is an all-time game-changing classic record. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Do I like it? I don't really think I do.
No.
Do I want to listen to it? No. But it's so good. And she's a fucking an unbelievable person for making this record.
Yeah. There are very, very few records that make you feel like you're
being physically attacked.
Well, yeah, that, but also make you feel like maybe you're a better, more sympathetic person for listening to them.
Yeah.
I don't know if better is the right word, but
Well, I think just I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Two white guys talk.
But that's all right. I mean,
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Fucking hell, we're allowed to think things.
Yeah. It's fine. It's a hard one. Should we move on to mine?
Yeah. Go on. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is very, very different, I have to say. It's the Saint Pierre Snake Invasion, Caprice Enchante.
Right.
My favourite kind of hardcore records are ones where the kitchen sink is thrown in and they're incredibly experimental and they go to all sorts of odd places and you just don't know what is going to happen next with them. And I think this album constantly keeps you guessing. I think this is the sort of thing where you just don't know what you're going to hear next, even on the dozenth listen,
Yeah.
And I can't really think of a record that has achieved that as well as this album this year. And I really didn't expect this, to be honest. Previous to this album, my interest in the Saint Pierre Snake Invasion was very nonplussed, really. I'd seen them a number of times at sort of Arctangent Festival or supporting bands or things like that, and I kind of always saw them as pretty much as gimmicky as the name, really. I didn't see them as a joke, but there was a sort of humor in it which I just didn't really respond to particularly well, and I thought the songs were okay but nothing particularly special. So to get this record and just be like, holy shit. I mean, I'd heard a few things on the grapevine, but to get this record and be completely blown away by just how experimental and interesting and chaotic and frenetic it was. And so much heavier as well. There were more of a kind of 80s Matchbox Beeline Disaster level of heaviness before, I would say. But this is actually like a proper fucking heavy record when it wants to be. But it's also incredibly melodic and hooky and has some amazing lines which you sing back live and stuff. And then, a male voice choir will come in at some point and then the entire band just sort of explodes in feedback and distortion. Or there's the a cappella song, It Gave a Lovely Light, which, many other bands who would do an a cappella song just to break up a few songs, that would just be a nice kind of interlude thing. If that a cappella song and It Gave a Lovely Light was not on this record, it would be a much worse record. It's a really integral part of the album, I think. It's a really beautiful moment on the record as well. And I think, but actually having said that, even without those extra flourishes, I think it would be a very good hardcore album. I think it'd be a very strong hardcore album, straight ahead hardcore record. But with them, it just makes it something even better and even more interesting. And one of my favorite hardcore records, possibly of the decade. And
it's really very good. I mean, I think for hardcore, particularly in the vein you're talking about, I don't know that many people have even attempted to make a record like this. Really.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I feel like I haven't heard a record like this for such a long time. I keep going back to like That Was Then, This Is Now, with the James Cleaver Quintet.
Yeah.
Like that's the last one and that was fucking what, 2010?
I think they're better. I think St. Pierre Sneak Invasion are better songwriters than James Cleaver Quintet.
Possibly, yeah. I love that record, that James Cleaver Quintet record. But yeah, I think you might be right. But just that sense of like throwing, you just have no idea what's going to come next, and I find that really exciting in music, and there isn't an awful lot of it these days. It's kind of annoying.
No, although we've had quite a bit in this top 5, to be fair.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
But I suppose I'm talking more specifically about like hardcore, I guess. But within that realms, like there's a lot of very pouring meat and potatoes hardcore.
Yeah.
There's so much of it, but I don't think like anyone who sort of called this meat and potatoes, I think probably shouldn't have a license to criticize anything, let alone music. Yeah. I just adore this record. I think it's fucking great.
It's very good.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, that was Caprice Enchanté.
Yes.
By
We'll
the St.
go with
Pierre
that.
Snake Invasion. My number 2. Oh, God. Okay, right. I don't know, even still looking at it, I can't split my top 2. I still can't. I kind of want to give a joint 1. Because the 2 albums that are my 1 and my 2 are so different from each other that I just genuinely don't know how to split it. And even looking at it now, I genuinely feel like I don't actually know which one's number 1 and which one's number 2. I've never ever had that before, Renfrey.
You're gonna have to say one.
So, my number 2 is number 2 on the basis of the fact that I've listened to my number 1 more.
Okay. It's not a terrible way to do it.
Yeah. But that also doesn't feel like the right thing. And I feel like this should really be, this really deserves to be number 1. Because I think it's perfect. Maybe that's the thing. Don't know if the other one's absolutely perfect.
I feel like this is work you should have done off mic.
Mate, it's work that I have been doing.
Yes.
Like off mic. And it's been flipping and flipping and flipping and flopping.
Flipping and
Flipping and flopping all over the place. So actually, yes, my number 2 is Animal Choir by Her Name Is Calla, which is, I'm staggered this is not number 1. I am absolutely staggered this is not number 1. I tried to keep it to myself because obviously last year Dose Your Dreams was just so fucking lapping. Everybody was so much better, and I just let it slip straight away. I heard this record and I was like, oh, forget about it. Forget about it. I mean, actually, we were talking about Tool earlier. I came out of that Tool listening session and Dan P. Carter was there. And I went, best album of the year, Dan, you reckon Tool? And he was like, oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. And I went, definitely not. Not a chance. I was like, Her Name Is Calla is better. And I've listened to that Tool album 3 times. He's like, oh, well, you only listened to it like 3 times. I was like, I don't need to any more listens to it. 3 listens is good enough. As much as I'm sure I'll get more out of it, it's still enough for me to tell you categorically it is not as good as Animal Choir by Her Name Is Calla. Not a chance. And he then went and played them on the radio on Rock
He
Show.
did.
Yeah. After that. So that's how that came about.
Well done, Steve.
Thanks. We spoke about this record. They've split up, this band.
Yep.
And I was so annoyed that they split up. I'd never heard of them before. I know nothing about them at all. I think we mentioned a lot of post-rock. We mentioned Radiohead. I think I said it was like a heavier version of OK Computer. I don't feel like that's playing it up or unrealistic at all. I genuinely think this is number 2. I'll tell you the one reason why this is number 2 is because I feel like I've kind of heard stuff like a bit like this before. And that is probably the only reason. And because I haven't listened to it as much as I listened to my number 1. But what they do with post-rock, with alternative rock, with indie, with bits of like jazz and folky things, and the tone and the texture and the tonality of this record is incredible. the riffs, when you get a riff, which is, it's not often on this record that you get a full blown riff.
Nope.
But when you do, my God, absolutely unbelievable. They could probably be a metal band, be a really much better metal band than most of the metal bands that have come out. If they felt like it, if they thought, fuck it, like, let's just write some riffs, they could probably be like a great metal band. But this record is just an absolutely, it's a perfect record. It's kind of, I would give this 10 out of 10. Like, I would actually give this record 10 out of 10. It's mad it's not number one. Absolutely mad. I would give this record 10 out of 10. And I think, particularly towards the end, Robert and Gerda, that kind of 8-minute long epic, and so many of them
So
are
uplifting.
8 minutes long, and
Yeah.
So much of it is, like you say, uplifting. By the end, it's so uplifting. The first part of it feels really dark and gritty, and let me spin through the ground like a drill, that refrain that comes in. It's incredible, this record. I mean, if you haven't heard it and you don't know this band, if you're not aware of this band, I think you have to listen to it. I think you kind of owe yourself, and you like the band, for everything that they've put into this record. This should be winning Mercury Music Prizes. This should be winning Brit Awards and Grammys, and they should be playing at Brixton Academy and 4 nights at Brixton Academy selling it out, because this is all the stuff that you get told by people is what people like about music. Have they been on Radio 6? I don't think they have. Have they been in The NME? I don't really know. I'm not sure. I've never heard them or seen them before. Have they been on Jules Holland? No. Why have people not picked up on this band that have taken elements of some of the biggest and most popular bands of all time, some of the most respected artists in the history of guitar music? They've taken their best work and they have created an amalgam of that work, and it is at almost as good as some of the very, very best records that have ever been made in alternative music. This record is fucking staggeringly brilliant. Staggeringly brilliant. Quite how it's number 2. Well, we'll find out in a minute why, won't you? But yeah, it's an amazing record, and it's the biggest surprise of the year for me. Do you know what I mean? It's you kind of gave it to me. We should we should do this, and I saw it was like 65, 66 minutes long.
It's 78.
78 minutes long. Yes, sorry, it's even long. But again, it doesn't feel like that, does it? That's another one where I didn't even realize it was that long.
Nope.
Because it feels like 45.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really special record, this, and it's they've gone out with quite a bang. Her name is Calla. So that's my number 2.
Okay. My number 2 is Tool.
Oh, yeah, there they are.
There they are. I suppose you could argue that I've been caught up in the hype a little bit of possibly one of the most anticipated albums of the decade. But as you kind of said before, when you wait 14 years for a record and it doesn't disappoint you, that's a hell of an achievement.
Yeah.
And it is an album like the Cult of Luna record. And we did compare these two albums quite a lot. And I think there are lots of comparisons between the Cult of Luna and the Tool record. But like that album, it just, to me, just gets better with every single listen. And I think I was part of me was a bit like, should it really be this high? And the reason I put it there is kind of thinking about 10,000 Days and how much that has grown on me in like the last 5-6 years. I feel like this record is going to do that possibly twofold, I said at the time, and you poo-pooed it a little bit, but I said at the time that like I feel like this is Tool's post-rock record. And I think I feel that even more strongly now. And actually, the reason for that, and I'm going to have to contradict you a little bit here, but I feel like this record's flows perfectly, like really brilliantly, to the point where I don't really have a favourite song on it because I pretty much view it as one long song and Tempest.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, you're obviously well within your rights to feel like that, but
Yeah.
I personally do not feel like that.
It feels like a. I mean, it feels like a wave. I agree that like it sort of builds up and then it goes down and then it builds up again. It feels like this breathing organic machine. Or, well, not machine, but it does feel very organic and very kind of. There's just and once again there's something hypnotizing about it. I mean, this album is what, like 85 minutes long if you include the interludes as well, you know. And every time I put it on, it feels like half an hour's gone by. You know, how the hell Tempest is a almost 16-minute song? I'll never figure that out because there's no way in hell that it feels like 16 minutes. Not to me.
That's got to be the high point, surely, for everyone. Tempest. It's so brilliant.
I think. I mean, yeah, I do kind of feel that, but I feel that because it's the culmination of the record. I feel like it's what we've been building to.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what that's almost why I see it as like one long song. Yeah. If anything, one small one tiny issue I have with this record is possibly, I think the interludes are the least essential interludes in the Tool back catalogue.
I think that's why I feel like they break them up a bit much. I think, what is it? The one that goes into Invincible with a bloody long name.
Litany to
yeah, that one, yeah. That for me works quite well and goes into it. But it feels like there feels like a lot of very definite stops and starts in this record, which is not very Tool.
Well, that's why I think I actually prefer. I mean, I prefer to listen to what I'm going to call the CD version, which is basically the version that doesn't have those interludes, bar Chocolate Chip Trip. I think it just works and flows better as a record. And, you know, Tool are always very adamant that the interludes are a very integral part of the whole and blah, blah, blah. And I would agree with all their other records. But it is the one thing that I would say about this album where I do just feel like they do feel tagged on a little bit, if I'm honest. Yeah. But if you
it's funny how it's been number 8 and number 2, and yet we're
still criticising.
We're talking about the things that aren't right about it. It's like everyone just expects it to be number 1.
I think, but I just think at the end of the day, there are a lot of Tool imitators. You know, we've talked about Wheel this year. There's Carnival. There's there's loads of them. But then there's only one Tool. No one does it quite like Tool, do they? Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to put your finger on. Why, you know, Tool are better than Carnival or whatever. It's difficult to actually be able to articulate what it is about Tool's music that is better than those imitators. But there's just something, I don't know, it just transports. It's just transportative. I just find it really
I think that's what it is. I think they have something which feels like those other bands that you mentioned feel like they sit down and write songs together, where I feel like Tool's songs are written through them. Wow, what a pretentious thing to say, but
you
fuck
know,
it.
It is enormously. But then to be honest, cool. I get you. I totally get that. I'm with you, to be honest. They just.
Well, what we could say is that those songs are born from the members of Tool getting together and just jamming, and you know, I think that would probably be a less sort of like eye-rolly way of putting it. Do you know what I mean?
I'll cut that. You know, like I think that I cannot really think of a record that I've been waiting for, you know, I mean, Chinese Democracy, I think is actually a much better record than a lot of people give it credit for. But, you know, I wasn't delighted when I heard it. You know, it's very patchy. Material Control, the Glassjaw record, you know, fucking adore that band so much, and I quite like Material Control. There's bits on it which I think are fucking amazing, but you know, overall, bit of a disappointment.
We had to wait 10 years for a Rammstein album this year, and it came out and it's like, it's another good Rammstein album.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took me a few listens to realise whether I was disappointed with this record or not, but I now know absolutely for sure that I'm not, because every time I listen to it, it feels like it's half an hour in length, and I just find it washes over me in this amazing way. I guess I see it as a sort of post-rocky thing because I listen to it in much the same way that I listen to a lot of instrumental music, in that it just sort of washes over me and I let it just kind of change what's happening in the room. You know, it just sort of changes the atmosphere of the room. And I just feel completely and utterly transported by it. And, you know, I think it's been received incredibly well by Tool fans. I think people who weren't Tool fans are a little bit clueless as to what the deal is, I guess.
Yeah.
But what can I say? I'm a sucker for Tool. There
was a guy on it's the Metal Hammer album of the year, and there was a guy on Facebook I noticed today who said, "Oh, have you not heard the Motionless in White album?" It's like, wow, you think that's better than Tool? Yeah, I do. That's weird because there's another band called Motionless in White, and that's sort of goth band, but you can't mean them. You can't.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
There
like,
you
mate,
go.
just don't say things like that. Anyway, we said we were going to do it last week. Before we get to our number ones, a few honourable mentions, Renfrey. I'll start since I'm doing my number one in a second. Stuff that just didn't quite make it in for me. St. Pierre Snake Invasion was very close. That album is great. Like you say, that's grown on me a hell of a lot as the year's gone on. Samsara by Venom Prison is one of the best sort of straight ahead heavy records. I think that's been very, very well received, as you know, as you probably are already aware. That's very, very good. Brutus again, Nest by Brutus was damn close to getting in. Morbid Stuff by Pup was damn close to getting in. Sombre Desane by Herod probably is 21.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Fair enough.
And Mike Patton and Jean-Claude Vanier, Corpse Flower. I fucking love that as well.
Okay.
That was in the mix. And if Herod's 21, I think... Actually, no, Herod's 22. Jambonai Onda would be 21.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was a real surprise, and I think is a really, really interesting record. And I'm was a bit annoyed that I didn't put it in, but I thought maybe I should take that. Bob Mold's just a nice record in, but I do listen to Bob Mold more. But I thought Jambonai was like, that is a really, really cool, like really interesting, cool record. I like that a lot. And Sea Space Cowboy. I thought it was great. The correlation between entrance and exit wounds, really, really good. Gift from God, Approximation of a Human, really, really good as well. And fair play to like Korn and Slipknot as well. They both released really, really good records this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably enough of my my others. Oh, Rotting Christ as well, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, the Heretics. Yeah,
that's very good.
I think it goes to show that this has been a really good year because my bubbling under list is almost an A4 page long. I won't read all of them. But Smash, Heart of No Light.
That was another one of mine. Yeah.
Just like
I think I said that last week actually.
Yeah. What a phenomenal record. Controversial, but I still think that Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes album, I love that record.
Really?
I think it's really, really good. I think the second half is far better than the first half, but I think the songs that are on it are amongst his best. That Danger Face is just there.
Yeah,
one of the best debuts of the year, but just didn't quite get in there. The new Wear Your Wounds album was actually in my top 20 for most of the year.
That's good as well. I didn't review that because I was away that week.
Yeah, we had Damien in.
But I have listened to it a few times. Yeah, it's really good. I prefer the first one personally.
I decided not to put it in because A, I prefer the first one, and B, I think it's possibly a bit too similar to the first one. But I still
There's a couple
fucking
of absolutely
love it.
unbelievable songs.
Yeah, I fucking love it. Bob Mould. Absolutely bubbling under. Jambonai, absolutely bubbling under. The Damn Things, High Crimes.
Yeah, that's dropped off a bit
record.
to me.
Actually, I love it.
Yeah.
I still love it. I still think it's great. But I just didn't quite get in. We Never Learned to Live, the Sleepwalk Transmissions, fantastic album. Biffy Clyro.
Biffy Clyro album was
Balance,
good.
Not Symmetry. Just probably the most excited I've been about a Biffy Clyro album in years. Pixies, Beneath the Earring.
Yeah, that's a good album.
Racket Cannon 3.
That was good, yeah.
Cult Dreams, Things That Hurt.
Yeah, that's good.
Fucking brilliant. Black Futures, I thought was worth it.
Better than I reviewed it, I have to say.
I have got Slipknot as well. Put Fever 333 in just to annoy you, really. Teeth of the Sea, Ithaca, Waste of Space Orchestra.
Yeah, that was good, actually.
Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard.
Yeah, that was good.
Full of Hell.
I had that.
You did. Lost in the Riots. I put in there. I thought that was a really, really excellent.
Yeah, that was a good record. Actually. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
Tom York as well. Anima by Tom York. Actually,
Anima
I
by
really,
Tom York.
really liked it. Don't know if you had that on it, but
I didn't have it on the Bubbling Under, but also I really love that Mono record. The Nowhere Now Here.
yeah, not for me, mate. Sorry.
And finally, I'll just say Pelican, Nighttime Stories.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really, really good Pelican record.
I also want to say Thy Art Is Murder as well, because I always do.
Fair.
So then for laugh. Right, number one. You probably know what this is, right? You probably know what my number one is. You do, don't you? Do you think you know?
I feel like it's going to be really obvious when you say it.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think everyone else is going, Renfrey. You know. Why is this number one ahead of Her Name Is Calla, which was number one and basically like not even number one in pencil, was like half in pen for most of the year, from sort of about 3 days after I heard it. I probably would call this joint number one, to be honest, especially when you consider the last track is not something that I need to listen to ever. But I love it when I hear something and I think, well, I've never really heard anything quite like this before. And in a year when there's been loads of really cool, exciting rock music that has made me want to jump around and go, yeah, like the Wild Arts, like Bob Mould, like Dinosaur Pile Up, like the Menzingers. And when there's also been lots of very, very dark, harrowing records, the Linguita Ignotas, the Nick Caves, the Swans, the Cult of Lunas, those sort of bands, to find something which is neither of those things, but yet basically somehow makes me feel like both of those things, is why this is number one. Clipping, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. This is a very dark and very unusual record. I've gone back to Clipping's back catalogue since I heard it. Mm-hmm. And I do think this is, like, some people might go, you only reviewed this a few weeks ago, like a month, 2 months ago. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it did only come out on, when did it come out?
It was end of October.
The middle of October, the 18th of October it came out. So, obviously it's gone from sort of nowhere to one. And I'm sure people might go, I think in a year's time, maybe you might think Her Name Is Calla is better. And you're right, I might do. Who knows? I do think Her Name Is Calla and this are kind of equal, even though, like I said, they're both so fucking different. But I basically there's not been a day that has gone by since this record's come out that I haven't listened to it. And I've listened to it in order. I've listened to it backwards. I've listened to songs and then gone, I want to listen to that song and I want to listen to that song. I think it does everything that all of the music that I've talked about in this top 20 has done for me for this year. There are parts in it that make me feel angry. There are parts in it that make me feel scared. There are parts of it that make me feel sort of furious and pumped up. There are parts of it that just make me want to swing my bum around. Do you know what I mean? There are...
That's a nice image.
Yeah. There are parts of this that are unbelievably catchy. There are parts of this that are unbelievably harrowing. There are bits of this record that are just white noise. Aimless, skull-crushing, horrible, formless white noise. There are parts of this record that are so catchy and so poppy that... that you just can't help but, like I say, kind of jiggle your knee to it. I think, musically, I think this is, like I said when we did the review, I think you could take all of the rapping off of this and all of the lyrics and all of the vocals. I think you could take all of that away and you would still have a really, really cool, industrialized electronic noise record. I think you'd have a record which would probably be pushing towards the top 20 on its own, regardless of before you even add somebody else in there. Because I think the little bits of John Carpenter, the little bits of dark wave and synth wave, the bits that sound like Atari Teenage Riot or Suicide, I love all that. And I think it's a really cool knowing mix of two guys who obviously are very, very deeply versed in soundtrack music and noise music, and I think they've made a really kind of cool template, like kind of a base. This like that could, like I say, could exist completely on its own. But for me, you know, obviously, when you're putting in these raps from what's the guy's name? David Diggs, isn't it? Diggs.
Yes.
When you're putting in these raps about and these kind of lyrics that are, you know, designed to make you feel very uncomfortable, some of them, and also some of them designed to kind of pump you up to feel angry, to feel fury, you know, like this is what, when we're talking about like Fever 333 and Refused and the return of Rage Against the Machine, this is why I fear for those bands a little bit, because I listen to something like Clipping and I think these people are young and boundaryless and genuinely articulate and terrifying, and they are and they're doing this right now, like they're living, this is the first time that they've ever thought about, you know, Blood of the Fang, which is about kind of 50 years of civil rights sort of swallowed up into just under 5 minutes, is both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. It is not one of those songs like, you know, burn it, like Fever 333, burn it down that you get on the Refused record. If you hear this, you're a weapon. Those slogans have always been something that I've gone, I want more than that. Rage Against the Machine used to do that. Rage Against the Machine used to talk about Huey P. Newton and Malcolm X and people like that, and you would go, oh, I want to know who that is.
Who are those people? Yeah.
And you know, and Blood of the Fang does that. Nothing Is Safe is just really, it's this kind of horrific, claustrophobic gang warfare story, and he is so dexterous. This is, for me, I think, I mean, impressive is not the right word for Linguita Igniter, but for me, this is the most impressive vocal performance of the year, from lyrical content and delivery. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. And that I'm picking this, even though the last track is 18 minutes, the sound of a piano burning, which I've got to the point where I will listen to now, all 18 minutes. I now know when the keys drop. Do you know what I mean? Like,
wow. Okay.
it's, and the thing is that I know the members of Clipping have actually gone, people go, oh, why are you putting the thing at the end? And we said that in the review, and I did go, yeah, to be fair, just pretend it isn't there. And they've kind of come out and gone, we're fucking sick of people going, why have you put this at the end? And they said, the record's intense, and we wanted to give you 18 minutes to just chill out and not have to be bombarded, and just have a kind of, you know, something else so that you can decompress from the record, and then you can put another record on. Okay. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I'm going to do that next time, because I've got it on vinyl, and piano burning is one side of the vinyl.
Right, okay.
Right? So you actually have to turn it over and go, I'm making the commitment to listen to this. And you do it, and you sort of sit there after everything that's just happened, club down, you know, this sort of very, very angry industrial noise with like screaming in the background. It sounds like a kind of 80s murder movie soundtrack. Where he's talking about, you know, people stuffing pig stuffing money in their mouth, like the absolute disdain that he has for sort of the corpulent society at the moment, you know, in materialism. You can fucking feel it absolutely drips with disdain, that song. And then at the end you get 18 minutes of a piano sort of burning after you've heard about people, you know, there's so much blood and guts and gore and spite and hate on this record. And often, you know, I think we said at the time, it feels like you can inhabit that character, and it kind of pumps you up a bit, or you can kind of sit back passively and listen to it and just go, oh God. And I think both ways of trying to experience that record, the record, are just as invigorating. I just love it. I mean, I've not really listened to much hip hop loads over this decade. To be fair, I think when I brought in Plan B, I said this is probably the last hip hop album that I really, really loved. And I've tried with some of the bigger ones, and I keep on trying because I used to like it so much when I was a kid, and up till when I was about 24, 25, 26, I was still sort of very much like listening to hip hop quite a lot, and then I just sort of got out of it, and this has come along, and it just feels like it's opened the door to JPEG Mafia and Mother More. I want to shout out Rich Hobson, who writes for Metal Hammer Magazine, who put me on text. If you like clipping shit and that is a fucking insane album as well. I mean, I have only just heard it, but that's a kind of almost a mixture of this and Linguita Ignota. It's a very, very difficult record to listen to. Okay. Maybe we'll talk about that another day. But yeah, it just felt so different, yet so relatable. It felt so different from anything else, yet also weirdly so relatable to all the other things that I had in this list. And I think that's why it's number one, and the fact that I basically listen to it every single day. Is it better than Her Name Is Kala? It's not better.
It's an incredibly difficult comparison.
I mean, the thing is, it's not better. It's not better. And that's why I feel weird having it at number one and having Her Name Is Kala at number two. Essentially, these are two records that are so different that they kind of should both be joint number one, really. I picked Clipping on the basis that I have spent much more time with it. I feel like I know the album way more inside out than I do. As much as I have listened to Her Name Is Kala. Like when it first came out, I listened to it loads. And then I was like, okay, like step away from it for a bit, come back to it now and again. And that's what I found myself doing. And every time I put it on, I think this album is incredible. But I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to press play again a second after I've listened to it, because it's
more like a treat.
Hard. Yeah, it's a treat, and it's hard work. It's a challenge. It's a challenging record. It's quite an exhaustive record. Whereas I feel like Clipping, as exhausting as it can be, I also have a really, really good time being in that world. So I just want to listen to it all the time, and it's lost none of its potency for me at all. So it's number one.
Would it make you feel better if I told you that Her Name Is Kala is my number one?
I thought it would be. Yeah. And that actually, I thought, well, Renfrey's going to have it, so they will get a number one. I was almost convinced that you would have it as number one.
Yeah, I don't think it's the biggest surprise in the world, is it? No. Really? I feel like it's been. I feel like I've been so sort of enthusiastic about the record that my thoughts have been pouring out of my mind and going into other people's heads as if they, know full well that this is going to be my number one. But I just think this is, I think Animal Choir is just an absolute masterpiece of an album. I think it's incredibly bittersweet that Her Name Is Kala released their finest album ever and then split up. But then, as I said at the time, I mean, how on earth do you even begin to contemplate following up a record like Animal Choir? Yeah. Which just seems so, you said perfect. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that was the thing. As I was saying it, I was like, Clipping is not perfect. It's not perfect. You take Piano Burning, and there are bits where, there are long passages of noise that you just go, oh, I'm not sure you needed to really. But that feels quite kind of, you're being prodded. So I think it's a different. That's why I kind of let them get away with it. Whereas Her Name Is Kala, all of it, you go, oh my God, this is like, I am in on all of this. You wouldn't change a single solitary second of it. It literally is. It's without doubt a 10 out of 10 record.
Yeah, I agree. And and another one which is pretty much a full CD. I think it's like 78 minutes long. My consternation for long albums, but this album just sucks you into its world so evocatively and so beautifully that time passes just ridiculously quickly when I'm listening to it. It was besieged with difficulties, this album. It was very, very difficult for them to sort of write and do. I think I believe Tom Morris, the vocalist and guitarist, I think that his laptop was stolen once and it had a bunch of the demos and lyrics on it and stuff like that, so they had to start again and all this kind of thing, besieged by and I think those kind of things could make or break a band, and in a way it did break Her Name Is Colour, but it feels as if they knew that this was the last chance saloon. It feels as if they knew that this was it. And so they poured every single ounce of blood, sweat, tears into every single note of this record. And that's the feeling that I get every single time I listen to it. Yeah. It's just so expansive, and there's the instrumentation that is used on it. You've got, alongside your normal guitar, drums, bass, blah, 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 you've got regular use of strings and organ. Theremin is used loads on this record, which is, I suppose, where a lot of the Radiohead stuff comes in. It's an incredible exercise in showing how a band can pull back and use subtlety and space to create a sound which is far, far heavier than 99% of so-called extreme bands. And whilst you would never, ever label this album an extreme album by any means, I think it is fair to say that it is an album of extremes. Yeah. So you've got... it starts with Swan, which is this really devastatingly... it's got this... steady drum beat which like lifts the which like it sounds so claustrophobic.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Just really, really quickly, and this will be, you'll go, oh yeah, no, I know what you mean, but they're such different bands. The first track on Wrongdoers by Norma Jean.
Oh right,
Norma Jean are like obviously a fucking hardcore band, a metalcore band, metallic hardcore band, and that way the guitar rings out. If you listen to that, bum. Ga!
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Ga! And just letting it just build and build and build. It's because when that was coming through, I was like, oh, this is going to be something heavy. I thought it was going to be like a post-metal band. Like I say, they are heavy. They're a fucking heavy band
when they want to be. Yeah. But then 2 tracks later, you've got Kaleidoscoping, which is a beautiful piano ballad. Which, if Tom York put his name to Kaleidoscoping and it was just re-released, I believe that everyone would be like, oh yeah, of course that's Tom York, and the Radiohead comparisons are pretty difficult to avoid, as we said quite a bit in the review, but
not a bad comparison.
It's not a bad comparison, and I believe I said this in the review. It was a while back, but I believe I said this in the review, but I'd stand by it even more strongly now after having the record for 9 months or however long it's been. I think I said then, if Radiohead released this record, it would be hailed as the best thing they've done since at least In Rainbows, if not OK Computer. And I strongly think that. In fact,
I think it would be. I think people might say Kid A because people like to say how great Kid A is, and people think that's now kind of considered the. I think people. I think people who like OK Computer probably, if people who remember Radiohead as that band, I think people would say this is the best Radiohead album since OK Computer.
Yeah.
I think I'd say it.
Yeah, I think I would.
To be perfectly honest. I mean, fuck me. I love Radiohead, and they've released some, absolutely. I mean, something like Hell to Thief. I think Hell to Thief is so great.
Really underrated.
I fucking love
Moonshaped Pool. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Moonshaped Pool is really good. And, and that's even within that kind of the Kid A and Amnesiac, sort of 1-2 they did as well. Is got so much shit at the time, but it's aged so well.
Yeah, it really has.
But I don't think any of them are as good as this record.
Nope, I'd agree. I agree. And I also think it's quite unlike any other album I've heard, really, even though it has really strong elements of, say, a Radiohead in some ways. Then there's almost like Cult of Luna-esque bits where it's really heavy and goes just sounds really oppressive, I suppose. And then there's bits of there's lots and lots of post rock. I mean, I broadly call Her Name Is Colour a post-rock band, but, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that are very un-post-rock.
It's way more catchy than 90% of post-rock, though.
Yeah.
Because that's it. Like I said, the riffs they're catchy. They're actually, you know, they're choruses that get in your, that, you know, like, let me spin to the ground like a drill. That refrain it will never leave my head. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's such a big, I know it's the one I keep using, but I think it's probably the biggest moment of like kind of in terms of memorable lyrics on the record.
There are a few. I mean, Frontier has one of the most beautiful couplets I've ever heard, which was "Time will make your heart stop beating. Time will bring you back to me." A moment of clarity as that sound is the crunch of the human spirit breaking.
Oh yeah, that's
you know, like just the manner that these words are put together and the poetry with which they're put together. I'm not going to go as far as to say that I think Tom is as much of a brilliant orator as Nick Cave, but I think he has the odd lines where you go, if Nick Cave wrote that, he'd probably be quite happy with that. Yeah. You know, I think that sound, is the crunch of the human spirit breaking, is very, like, a beautifully poetic thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were mentioning Robert and Gerda earlier as well. You know, a lot of this record is very, very down and despondent. I think it's a massive, a lot of it is to do with mental health and kind of how intolerable and suffocating that can be. But then there are these moments of absolute beauty and light, like the end of Robert and Gerda. I mean, the whole track, Robert and Gerda, is 8 minutes and 40 seconds, and the beginning and the end are so totally different from each other. It starts as a really depressing song and then turns into the most beautiful, sunny, uplifting, wonderful piece of music. It's amazing.
I think on the first listen through for me, that was the moment where I went, okay, so this isn't just a good album. This is like a worldie.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like as good as anything anyone's put out in this vein of music.
Yeah.
For fucking ever.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't have anything bad to say about it, really. I think it's an amazing swan song. I think it's a fucking shame that Her Name Is Colour are no longer a band, but then at the same time, what a beautiful full stop.
Yeah, it's a shame they split up. It's, you know, it's fucking, anyway. Oh well. I mean, I said it all at the time, don't split up, and obviously, you know, they did.
They didn't listen to you.
Listen to me. Well, why the fuck would you listen to me anyway? But yeah, it's your number one. It's basically my joint number one. Sorry to be like non-committal about it, but it's basically my joint number one. And it has been driving me fucking mad. Everything else was sorted, but it has been between those two, it's been driving me fucking mad. Because how do you compare those two records?
I think Clipping is a very good choice to go with, bearing in mind that you knew full well that I probably would have Her Name Is Colour as number one, so it makes it a little bit more interesting.
The Riot Act communal album of the year is almost not even almost. It's definitely Her Name Is Colour. Yeah, if we had to pick, if you sat here now and we went, we're going to pick one that is officially the Riot Act album of the year, that's it. Yeah. Because obviously you haven't had Clipping in your top 20 at all, so I would deviate, and I would be more than happy for that to be the situation. So,
but what an excellent juxtaposition between those two records, like Clipping and Her Name Is Colour. And I think I'm actually very happy that it's happened like that, because it shows the breadth of the show.
I think, you know, the records that we've talked about, 2019 has ended up being amazing. And like I said, for me, that top five of Nick Cave, Swansley, Guita Ignota, Her Name Is Colour, and Clipping, I honestly not sure I can think of another time where I've had records that I think are just as, I mean, you know, as discussed, I don't enjoy listening to all of them and all the time, but in terms of records that I admire, I don't know that there's ever been 5 records of that quality. I mean, you have to understand that usually we just have to stick to rock, punk, and metal. So I think maybe, had we not have been doing that over the years, that might have been a little bit different potentially. But yeah, I think that's as strong as anything.
That's a very strong top 5, actually, when you put it like that.
Yeah.
Nick Cave.
And yours, you know, like Her Name Is Colour, Tool, fucking
St. Pierre, Snake Evasion, Microwave, and Nick Cave.
pretty good. The problem is, Renfrey, will any of them make them into our forthcoming Album of the Decade podcast?
I'd imagine so.
We're doing the top 20 albums of the decade. That's going to be the next big thing that we're going to be doing. So that's coming soon. Soon.
Let's say soon.
Not next week. Probably a week after or so, isn't it? Or we might just whack it out. I think we're going to whack it out like a sort of treat.
We'll just whack it out like a special.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate that. Congrats to Her Name is Calla and Clipping for being our albums of the year. And we will be back next week with a little Q&A session.
Yeah, Q&A show.
Yeah, so
Probably quite a short one.
Get over to our social media and ask us some questions. We would appreciate that, and we'll answer them. Don't be too personal. I think we've kind of covered all that stuff already, to be fair. But big shout out to the guys at Musicism for giving us all the stuff. Go over to musicism.net to sign up for your courses. They are £9.99 a month, and we shall see you next week.